Joe Kenny, the Executive Counselor for District 1.
The former Executive Council of your partial district, right?
And Janet Stevens, Executive Counselor for District 3. You all know the Governor. Executive Counselor Ted Gatzis for District 4. Executive Counselor David Wheeler for District 5. We really want to thank you, Hypertherm, for having us today. I think this room's going to get a little crowded as we approach the 10 o'clock meeting because we have some performers and groups coming in. And so we thank you so much for hosting us today. Today, the counselors have all received some gift bags from Hypertherm. They provided hotter than plasma hot sauce, and we'll all know more about that because they make plasma cutters here. The Woodstock Inn Brewery provided us with a papaya pale ale. We have a syrup. No executive counselor shall ever run out of maple syrup. The Woodstock Sugar House provided that, and for those of you who live around here, you already know about this, but my Brigadero makes the most amazing chocolates, and so the counselors get a chance to sample some of the local foods from the area. Today, I really was excited to come up here to the Upper Valley and in Lebanon in particular to talk about how Lebanon's really becoming quite a little high-tech hub. And we're going to hear more about that. Obviously, we're going to hear from Hypertherm. We're also going to have the mayor of Lebanon come in at the breakfast meeting to talk a little bit about some of the other high-tech industry that's developing here in the area. And we also have with us today folks from Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center. I would first like to thank them for sponsoring our breakfast this morning, so thank you. And they're going to talk a little bit about the high-tech delivery of healthcare in the area and what they're doing. And we have with us today Dr. Kevin Curtis, who is the Medical Director of Telehealth, and also Katie Darling, who is the Operations Director of Telehealth. And they're going to talk to us a few minutes about what's going on with telehealth here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Like me here. Good morning, everybody. Good morning again, Governor Sununu. Good morning to the Executive Council. Thanks so much for having us.
I'm going to step right up to the mic. So
okay. So, thank you. So here, I'm Kevin Curtis. I'm an emergency medicine physician. I've been at Dartmouth Health for 21 years, and I'm the medical director of Connected Care, which is our center for telehealth. Sorry about my back. And what we thought we'd do in that theme of technology is walk you a little bit through the evolution of Connected Care and how we thought and have used technology and telehealth to help deliver care to the region. So, if we step back a little bit, we formed Connected Care 11 years ago in 2012, so well before the pandemic. And really, it was in the face of what you all already know. So much of our region, as you all know, is very rural. From a healthcare standpoint, each of the northern New England states, meaning Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, has one academic medical center. And that's, of course, in contrast to, I don't know how many are in Boston, but half a dozen or so. 50% of our hospitals are critical access hospitals, and that's in contrast to 20% nationally. And I say those last two things not because academic medical centers is the only place great care occurs, because in my telehealth or teleemergency role, I see the most outstanding care at critical access hospitals every week. But to say that academic medical centers are where there are typically a disproportionate number of specialists. And so that creates, or can create, tremendous access challenges in rural regions. So, it can be long distances to specialty care, and that's, of course, if you can get transportation, if you can miss a day of work, or a half day of work, if you can get childcare, and if it isn't in the middle of winter. So in the face of that, again, well before the pandemic, we said, well, maybe telehealth was a solution, or could be a solution to some of those access challenges and some of those gaps in care. Even back then, one of the things that we do, I know there's a technology focused today, but I will say one of the things we continue to do in telehealth is if a hospital or a community or a group of providers comes and says, how about some of that telehealth stuff? We first say, what's the gap in care that you're trying to address? Let's think about which ones of those telehealth might solve. Let's do it in a way that actually improves outcomes and has meaningful impact, and then let's wrap some technology around it. Now, sometimes that's an oversimplification, like in tele-ICU that we'll talk a little about, but sometimes, as we know from the pandemic, it's a little bit of HIPAA-protected, glorified FaceTime. So really to say, care first, and then what's the technology you need to be able to deliver that. When we did that exercise 11 years ago, really what we saw was one of the areas we thought that there were really some gaps and needs as far as access to specialty care was in a lot of the acute care and emergency department and critical services. We thought that was an area gap and one that we might be able to solve via telehealth. So as you'll hear a little more about, those include services that we are now very busy and have matured, like tele-emergency and tele-ICU and tele-stroke and emergency telepsychiatry and tele-ICN for neonatal care and telepharmacy. And then we'll talk a little bit about, as everyone knows, the one that changed a lot with the pandemic is actually our scheduled outpatient visits, which you probably all or almost all have done via telehealth. That was actually our least busy service before the pandemic. We were doing 8 to 10 visits across the entire health system a day, and then that peaked at 2,600 early in the pandemic and has stayed really busy since. So what I'll do now is I'll walk through just kind of a description. What am I talking about? What are these emergency telehealth services? What do they look like? How do we do that? And I will say that, for many of you, as I talk about the associated technology, I'm probably getting out over my skis compared to what you all know. So, but I'll just pick a couple services, talk about them, and then Katie will talk about some others. And then we'll also talk about a little bit, there certainly are challenges as we continue to try to deliver telehealth. There, just as a window into that, telehealth doesn't make providers, so there's still workforce shortages. It can be costly to deliver it. Our service is very mission-driven, our program is very mission-driven, but it can be costly. There are certainly challenges in licensure. There are challenges certainly in the technology, but one that Katie will talk about really that I think is relevant is really continuing to think about the broadband issue, particularly in the north part of the state, because insufficient broadband, of course, results in decreased access and inequities in healthcare delivery that I'm sure we all want to continue to address. So I'll walk through a couple of the services and what they look like. So I talked about tele-emergency and tele-ICU. So in our medical center, we have 2 hubs that are adjacent to each other, and I think the best I can do for a visual is if you picture the Star Trek comm. So they really are quite high-tech and very nice facilities. On one side is tele-ICU, and on the other side is tele-emergency. So I'll walk through tele-emergency first. In that hub, there is an emergency medicine physician and an emergency nurse that, when working in the hub, that is their clinical commitment for that day, that shift. It operates 24/7, and there are 4 stations in that hub. Tele-emergency is hardwired into 13 hospitals in northern New England. That means those emergency departments have hardware in their emergency department rooms all the time. There's no cart, there's no tablet. In a typical room, you'll have a monitor up in the corner. You'll have a microphone hanging down out of the way from the ceiling. You'll have a camera under the monitor, which allows zoom, pan, tilt, etc., that is operated from the hub. And there's a button on the wall. Anyone on that local team can push that button whenever they want, 24/7, and it directly rings into the hub, and then we call them up by live interactive audiovisual. And our doc and nurse in the hub has just become part of the team, and we say, how can we help? And we get involved typically in the most critically ill and critically injured patients. in the region for those hospitals, most of which are not in the Dartmouth Health System, who participate in that service. And we've done about 4,000 of those calls and had a significant impact on care and outcomes. Tele-ICU is similar in a way in that Tele-ICU, again, has this hub, has 5 stations, has an intensive care doc, and has an intensive care nurse 24/7. They are hardwired into 96 ICU beds throughout New Hampshire and Vermont. And again, those local ICUs can ask for help whenever they want. Tele-ICU has additional levels of technology, including they have very impressive predictive analytics. They are hardwired into the vital signs in the labs of every hospital. So even before traditional ICU medicine would say, someone looks like they're doing worse, these predictive analytics will say, you might want to look over here. The person's not doing terribly, but there's some signal that suggests they might just be starting down the wrong course, and then our team can proactively join the bedside team. I want to say in all these models, these are collaborations with the local team. That partnership is key, and those local bedside clinicians are outstanding. The one other I'll mention, and then I'll pass it over to Katie, is telepharmacy, which has been one of our early services. Telepharmacy is doing about 100,000 orders a month in 29 hospitals. So as you can imagine, in many hospitals, it is sometimes hard to get an additional half a pharmacist, which might be what you need, or you won't take vacation, you need to go on leave, and we can integrate right in and do their orders. Typically, all stat orders will be done under 10 minutes, and they've done about 4 million of those, and that extends into Massachusetts and New York. And again, just commenting, I said early on, we want to do it not just because we can and because we have the technology. We want to do it in a way that impacts outcomes. Tele-ICU, what we see is that along the lines of keeping care local, which is also one of our key goals, is patients would like to get their care locally whenever they can. That's where their family, that's where their caretakers, that's where their primary care providers are. In Tele-ICU, it typically results in a local ICU safely and effectively doubling the volume of patients that can stay local. And actually, despite doing that, they decrease their hospital length of stay. Similar, Tele-ED probably results in something like 13% of patients not needing to be transferred to the academic medical center, because between the two of our teams, we can work together and keep care local. Similar to telepharmacy, what we're seeing is not only those stat orders being done, but we're seeing maybe 800 a quarter that there's a medical safety issue or something was identified in an order that the telepharmacy staff picked up and said, maybe this isn't exactly ideal for the patient. So I'm going to pass it over to Katie to talk about some of our other services and then to talk a little bit more about the broadband challenges and the impact it has on our region. Thanks. I'm happy to take questions after.
Hi, I'm Katie Darling, Director of Operations for Connected Care at Dartmouth Health. Another one of the services that we have to offer is our teleneurology program that has been live for probably over 5 years now. With the teleneurology service, it doesn't just focus on stroke, it focuses on any neurologic condition in the emergency room or for patients that are admitted, because there's more than just stroke that needs to be cared for. This last month we hit 450 consults from our regional sites. We are up and live at 15 different hospitals throughout the region. The one thing that's great about the service is that we're really able to help hospitals retain patients locally. For critical access hospitals, they have about a 10% transfer rate for neurology patients, and our community hospitals have about a 5% rate. Because we're able to still care for those patients while they get admitted, they can keep them local to avoid that transfer. For our teleneurology service, we use a cart that has a camera on it that can zoom in and out, so the neurologist can actually zoom in to see the pupils on the patient, so it's a really high-tech camera on the cart. Our telepsychiatry program, we're live at 15 hospitals as well. We're able to bring psychiatrists into those local EDs where they otherwise do not have psychiatrists to see the patients. For a community access or a community hospital in New Hampshire, we were able to reduce the length of stay for a pediatric population by 66%. It was because we could get that psychiatrist in to see the patient sooner, start them on treatment, get a treatment plan going, and help them work through the system. Our virtual urgent care service, we've been live with that for about 2 years now, and patients really enjoy it. The accessibility of logging in, getting that virtual care appointment. 20% of patients were able to avoid an ED visit by using virtual urgent care. And another good data point with that is that 21% of patients actually said they would have delayed seeking care if not for virtual urgent care. So we were able to provide care for 21 patients that otherwise would not have received care. Had to take my notes out for these data points, sorry. So for the outpatient virtual visits, we have a lot of satisfaction with that. As Kevin mentioned, pre-pandemic we were doing about 8 to 10 visits a day. During the height of the pandemic we went up to 2,600 visits a day, and now we've kind of leveled off between 500 to 700. We do see a higher volume in the wintertime where the weather's not as good. It's easy to transfer over so that we can still see those patients. Satisfaction is similar to in-person visits. For some of the main concern we have with that is around the broadband. So we do track video visit failure rates. And what that means is that these are visits that were scheduled with patients to be video and audio appointments, but something happened where the internet connection wasn't strong enough for them that it turned into an audio-only visit. In that case, a lot of the times that means the patient had to travel into Dartmouth because there was something that physically needed to be seen, maybe a rash or something that they needed to come in for. In New Hampshire, the towns that we see the highest video visit failure rates are really up in the northern area. So Berlin, within 6 months, had a 16% video visit failure rate, which resulted in about 83 patients needing to travel down. For Coldbrook, there was a 15% failure rate, so about 30 patients had to travel. In Keene, we had a 12% failure rate, so 1,455 patients ended up having to travel, likely to Cheshire, for that care. In Claremont, it was a 10% failure rate, which was about 363 patients, and then Littleton was a 10% failure rate for about 97 patients that ended up coming in that month. So it's really important that we start looking at that and how we can, because it's not satisfaction for patients in that scenario, and with our workforce challenges, it's also difficult to then find how are we going to squeeze this patient in because they really need to be seen. So I appreciate everyone's time today, letting us come and chat about our services, and I'm happy to open it up to any questions anyone has or any closing comments you have, Kevin.
Yes, thank you all. I'm just wondering if Governor and your counselors have any questions.
So the numbers of the individuals that you actually see within each of these subsets of telehealth are phenomenal. Do you keep track? I imagine, I don't know how you do it, as opposed to patient visits. I guess I'd look at the historical track of patient interactions. I'm assuming that is drastically going up as well, right? You're not just replacing. Obviously, there's a massive convenience in. Well, I was going to come to the hospital anyways, but now I don't have to come. I mean, that's still the same patient visit. Are you seeing a significant increase in the actual number of interactions, the number of patients you can kind of get through because you're able to, I'll say, kind of crank through, so many of the different touch points on telehealth as well?
There are definitely certain specialties in the outpatient visit space. There are certain specialties that can do that. I think dermatology rises up because they can quickly look at, certain skin conditions and make the diagnosis quicker. For the acute care service lines to other hospitals, we have definitely seen that because they're utilizing a resource that they otherwise wouldn't have. But in other specialties, it's still that same amount of time to really get that history and everything that they need for the patient. So there's definitely certain specialties that we've been able to get more patients seen through.
And if you don't mind me asking, the second piece of that is, how does the billing get affected, right? So there's got to be maybe it's more, maybe it's less. Can you see more people, but are you getting reimbursed by private insurance at relatively the same cost? I mean, in the Medicaid world, we do everything in 10-minute or 15-minute increments or whatever it is. It drives me nuts. But on the private sector, it's a little different as well. So is the benefits, the patient benefits of telehealth not being matched with the financial? Like, is it costing you money, I guess is what I'm getting at, right? If you're getting reimbursed at a lesser rate, for the same patient visit just because you're interacting with them in a different way, that's going to be a problem, right? You're going to lose money doing it. So how does that work?
Yes, it's definitely a concern. So we've been really lucky during the pandemic that we've had certain flexibilities in place, where CMS has put the flexibility out to reimburse telehealth visits the same as the in-person rate. So from the beginning of the pandemic until these flexibilities continue at the end of next year, we'll be reimbursed the same for telemedicine as in-person visits. And most all commercial payers are following along with that at the time being. So there have been a few outliers in that space where certain hospital-based billing codes are going out for Medicare where we're not getting the technical reimbursement. It's a small amount. So we're not worried about it now, but that is one of the challenges that we're worried about facing at the end of next year to see how is this going to roll out, how are we going to be reimbursed for these visits, because it will be detrimental to patients if we're not reimbursed the same and now they need to travel in for something that they could have had done at home.
And if I may, last one. So do they give you a justification why they wouldn't reimburse you at the same rate if you're getting the same outcome? I mean, is there well, we're only going to give you 3/4 of the rate because why? I don't know. I mean, if you're seeing the patient at the same time and you're getting the same outcome, you're buying, the patient is effectively buying the same product, right? Just getting it delivered in a different way. So why, is there an understanding of why that rate might be affected in a negative way?
I think what they're trying to do over the next year and a half is find that research to say, can we prove that telemedicine is just as effective as in-person care? I think we have some research that shows it for certain specialties, and they're more interested in seeing the proof to know that we should reimburse these the same. So I think that's why they want to continue the flexibilities in order to get that research to kind of prove that we should be at the same.
Yeah, just a couple thoughts to several of those questions. One, to the first one about the growth and the use. In the acute care services, it's hard to determine what the baseline would have been without the service. And what I mean by that is if you think about the teleneuro, telestroke program seeing 450 patients a month, what would have happened at those hospitals without the service? Some, the patients would have tried to be transferred to the medical center, and maybe there's a capacity challenge there. Some, they would have functioned without a neuro consult and maybe needed it. So it's a little hard to say what would have happened, but we can track the growth, which is exponential. Similar in ICU, the exponential involvement of the tele-ICU team. What would have happened in the local ICU? Well, they have great teams, and they would have provided care, but maybe not with the same level of intensivists. So we make the jump that if we've done 20,000 tele-ICU admissions, which we have, that is a reflection of a need and a gap that is hard to measure more quantitatively.
That's great. What I'm trying to get at is we don't want to create a system where we're disincentivizing telehealth.
Right.
If it's working, if you're getting the right product, I don't want to create a system where not just you, but all the hospitals are like, don't use telehealth because we lose money on every telehealth patient. I'd rather have them drive in here because that's the only way we're going to allow ourselves to stay on a Medicaid-driven program or Medicare-driven program, because otherwise we don't get our money and we don't want the patient.
Yeah, from my biased perspective, I think sometimes in telehealth right now we are being asked to provide outcome measures and proof that is beyond the bricks and mortar. For example, if I said to you, what's the outcome benefit of one visit to your primary care doctor? Well, it's a little tricky because it's a continuum, but what we ask on by payers is show me the benefit, that the benefit of that telehealth primary care visit is equivalent. Well, we don't actually have a measure, so I think we're being asked too much. The other thing is some of the withholding of money is saying, well, we paid you for a facility fee to keep the lights on and to run your facility. You don't need that anymore. But in actuality, telehealth is very expensive for us, I will say, because in a lot of those acute care services, we are paying clinicians to be available 24/7 for acute care services, and we certainly don't want to pass on all those costs to critical access hospitals that are the backbone of care. So all the things you're asking are the challenges we're trying to address every day, which are cost and access, and how do we get reimbursed in a way that now we know for equivalent care. So,
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much.
The red light.
When we went into the state of emergency,
We know that when we went into the state of emergency on March 13, 2020, behavioral health care providers in the state of New Hampshire were struggling to stay afloat because insurance providers in the state were balking, resisting full reimbursements for telehealth visits at a level and rate comparable to in-office visits. And I personally contacted our insurance commissioner. Word traveled to the governor, and Executive Order 8 went into play, I think maybe 72 hours later, holding them accountable. Are you saying that since that has expired with the end of the public health emergency, that you're back at square one where you're finding resistance for reimbursements at a...
I'll let Katie talk as the expert, but what I will say is we're not back there now. We don't know what will happen at the end of 2024 in many of these situations. It's unclear what reimbursement will look like. And I'll just remind us that prior to the pandemic, for example, telehealth to someone's home on Medicare was not reimbursed. So you could imagine that somebody is having complex medical problems, has difficulty getting to an appointment. Telehealth would be a perfect solution, and that was not reimbursed by Medicare. So obviously most of the pandemic, that outcome was terrible, but one of the things it did was, and with support like yours, Governor, was rapidly move both the technology and the reimbursement to a better place that is not yet permanent. And Katie, you can talk about that.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is in the psychiatry space for behavioral health, we have seen more advances in that area than we have for other specialties, either specialty services or primary care, where there have been announcements that for mental health services, we are going to continue reimbursing for audio-only services. So it is the one area that has been more, evaluated and saying, yes, mental health definitely needs to stay reimbursed for telehealth. We just don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I will say there's many more advances in the mental health space.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'm just wondering, what's the next frontier? What's the next service that you're hoping to provide that you're not providing now?
Well, first I'll answer that in two ways. One is, I think the next frontier of telehealth, if we are to look forward as 5 or 10 years at least, hopefully, is that telehealth almost won't be called out as a thing. It will just be, when you get healthcare, some of it will be delivered remotely by audiovisual, and some will be in person. And if we're still old schooling it with, you get the letter in the mail that says this is a reminder for your appointment, between you and your clinician, you will have decided if the right answer is to do that remotely or in person. So that's kind of the big picture features. I think telehealth is a thing we talk about a lot now, and I'm glad we do, but I think it will just be care. As far as some of the areas that we're looking at, I'll give a couple examples. One is we're really looking a lot in inpatient virtual nursing support. So not exclusively, no one could ever replace bedside nurses, but with both workforce challenges, what are the portion of the things that are done at the bedside that could be taken off the plate of the bedside nurse so they could spend even more time with the patient? And so we're really looking at this work out there to look at virtual nursing, and I think that could help a lot of the problems we're seeing in the nursing workforce as far as workforce numbers, as far as burnout, et cetera. So that's one area. One other that I'll mention is we have a rapid response team in the hospital that if something happens kind of out of the emergency or out of the ICU area and somebody needs help, a rapid response team puts on their backpack their specially trained critical care nurses and they run to the bedside. A fair amount of the time, it's just evaluation and reassurance. And we could imagine that not only in the medical center, but could we expand that to the region to say a lot of that rapid response could be done remotely, and then a subgroup will actually meet people in person. So just kind of thinking about, let's really continue to try to flip the script on, there are many, many things that people need to be at the bedside for, but let's really think, what have we learned, both in our experience and from the pandemic, that say there's a lot more out there.
I just want to, question. I just want to thank you for coming today, for providing us this really informative presentation. Thank you, Dr. Curtis. Thank you, Katie Darling. And thank you, Dr. Hitchcock, again, for the presentation. Thank you.
We have some leave behinds that we'll just set over on the table that kind of summarize that if folks are interested. Thanks very much.
The next, Jennifer Levy from Hypertherm is going to come and talk to us about what happens here at Hypertherm, and again, part of this whole sort of presentation of what a high-tech economy is developing here in the Upper Valley. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcoming us.
Thank you for having that. I'm Jenny Levy. I'm the Executive Vice President of People, Community, and Environment here at Hypertherm Associates. Welcome, Governor. Welcome, Councilors. Welcome, General. Welcome, Troopers. Thank you, all of you, for coming. It's wonderful to have you here. What we thought we would do is just quickly explain a little bit more about Hypertherm. We're a major employer here in the state of New Hampshire. We were founded 55 years ago in 1968 up the road in Hanover, New Hampshire, with a graduate from the Thayer School of Engineering. We have been growing here. We're a private company. We make machines that basically shape metal and materials, namely water jet cutters, plasma cutters, and software. We ship globally. Half of our sales stay here in the United States, and half are exported. Our biggest export areas are the rest of the Americas, the Eurozone, and then Asia. However, we make all of our machines here. In this building specifically, we make handheld and smaller air units of plasma metal cutters. So, the councilors, you'll see this on your tour, should you go on that in a moment. We supply that machinery into heavy industrial environments, such as heavy equipment machinery manufacturing, infrastructure, and rail cars, shipbuilding, again, around the globe. So we are incredibly proud of being part of the U.S. infrastructure built out here. Here in New Hampshire, 2,000 employees worldwide. 1,200 of them are here in the Upper Valley across 12 buildings, and we're in one of our largest buildings here. This is a LEED Gold building and reflects our commitment to environmental stewardship. So the things to know about us at Hypertherm is that we are 100% employee-owned. So we are an ESOP. We've been a 100% employee-owned business since 2013. We were a 30% ESOP in 2001. So that is a huge part of what you will see and feel for us here at Hypertherm. We are committed to a no layoff philosophy. We have never had a layoff in 55 years. And the way that we do that is we have an unrelenting focus on Lean Six Sigma quality. We also are a very proud OSHA VPP Star status site here and across our building. So our commitment to safety and to the well-being of our associates is an incredibly strong part of our value system. Another part of our values, and they're on the wall, actually every wall of every building or room that we've got, also is respect for the individual. And that's important to us because of how we try and recruit people into Hypertherm. Our respect for the individual starts, for example, with we are a platinum certified veteran-friendly workplace. And we are very proud to bring in many veterans, not many of whom are in the room today, into work at Hypertherm, including being a Skills Bridge employer as well. We're also a founding member of the Recovery Friendly Workplace Certification of New Hampshire. We're actually already really working with recovery friendly programs, coming in and working here to provide employment for people in recovery and seeking to sustain recovery. That's a key part of well-being and respect for individuals as well. Additionally, we really looked for on-the-job training here. Our commitment is once you're here at Hypertherm, you do not need a college degree to be able to get future jobs and promotions. So of the 400 roles in the last year, 43% of them were filled internally by people here, already here. So once you come in, we have a paid job training program for machine operators. It's 4 weeks now, and people can come in from right out of school. In fact, we have a school training program that recruits people in. We hosted, before the pandemic, over 1,000 students to tour our high-tech manufacturing floors here. Last year, it was 500 middle school students, several hundred high school students, and then, again, students across the education spectrum, including community colleges, coming here to seek work, which is a wonderful thing for us. Our major challenges for our workforce here starts with housing. We have about a 1% rental vacancy rate in the Upper Valley. That is a huge issue for us. Our commutes are getting longer and longer, and that is a big issue. People have smaller housing than they would prefer for their families, and we're seeing that as a quality of life constraint. Additionally, a second major challenge for us is childcare. We estimate through an organization who study this here, Vital Communities, that in this area, over 80% of our child care centers cannot get the staffing they need to fill the slots they could provide. And that results in about 40% of our associates who need child care not having enough child care. We've had several child care centers close with 2 weeks' notice, and we've had people with 2 or 3 children in those centers unable to seek care, needing to take unpaid time off work until they found good care. Transportation is another big challenge for us. Access to public transportation from those commuting corridors, namely Claremont, Newport, coming across from Canaan. There actually is one bus from there. That's a huge constraint, too. The way that we address that is we incentivize van pools, and we subsidize the van pools. We incentivize carpools, and we also give additional money if you're buying a low-emissions vehicle to allow people to save on gasoline. So those are our 3 major workforce challenges. We've seen a lot of inflationary pressures on our workforce as well, so increasing electricity in their personal lives. For us as a workplace, we are paying $1 million more this year in electricity than we did in prior years, so that's become a huge constraint in our costs here. Thankfully, because of our environmental stewardship focus, we have over $6 million in savings over the last 13 years because of our conservation and efficiency efforts that are embedded in every team that we have. We buy 100% renewable energy here for our Upper Valley buildings. We cannot generate enough energy renewably here on site because we need quadruple the roof surface and the ground mounts to be able to generate that kind of energy. So instead, we go onto the market to buy renewable energy. But those inflationary costs around electricity are a huge constraint in our business. We saw $20 million in material inflation coming into our manufacturing centers here just last year. And that's become a huge issue as well, really compressing our bottom line. Again, I'll go back to our focus on Lean Six Sigma quality and efficiency. That's what really drives our ability to keep manufacturing here and keep our employment base here. So with that, we just welcome you all to Hypertherm. It's really wonderful to have you all here. We're incredibly proud to be able to host you all. Our associates cannot wait to meet some of you out on the tour. They're really proud of their work, and we hope you enjoy that, and happy to answer any questions. Down for our
Any questions? Councilor Kenny?
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. You really know your stuff. I mean, you know this company very well. So my question is on childcare. Everybody on the council, Governor knows that's kind of been my topic the last couple of years. Have you adopted childcare centers or centers within Hypertherm? And I say that because I believe childcare is a public-private partnership, and that the private sector needs to be a part of the solution in order for the employees to have childcare for their kids. So what is Hypertherm doing?
Great question. So we have a building we could theoretically put a child care center in. We've studied this now 3 times. The cost to outfit that center would be about $1.5 million to $2 million. It would require a $500,000 investment every year to help keep it running, and more than that to subsidize any participation in that center. The big issue, though, is access to child care providers. So even if we were to open the center, which we have not, cost is one reason, but the other is this next reason, which is if we were to open a center, we would pay competitive rates and we would get great child care professionals. However, we would be drawing from a zero-sum pool from the community. That feels actually like a wrong move for the community. So instead, you're right, I think public-private partnerships are incredibly important. Our town manager here in Lebanon, Sean Mulholland, is trying to set up a child care center in Lebanon, which we are seeking to support, and we think that that's a great solution. We also have an organization here called Vital Communities, of which our CEO is on the corporate council part of that. And that group of local community leaders are studying childcare and also looking for public-private partnerships. We just heard from some experts in Massachusetts, and they taught us on some of those partnerships that they've been able to create down there. And we're seeking to do something similar as we learn more here in the Upper Valley.
So just to follow up, since the Couch family was instrumental in starting this company,
Yeah.
and they have a foundation that supports early learning
Yep.
in child care initiatives,
Yeah.
do they collaborate with you here at Hypertherm?
They do. So Dick Couch is one of our founders along with Bob Dean. And then he and his wife Barbara Couch really grew the business to where it was until they sold it to all of our associates. There, as you just said, the Couch Family Foundation is instrumental in leadership around early childhood, I should say, development, and in multiple ways. And one of them is capacity, and one of them is quality of child care and child care professions. Actually, our Hypertherm Hope Foundation, which Barbara also founded, one of our strategic pillars is looking at child care center quality and helping to subsidize training and continuing training for child care professionals, because we see that as a constraint in an area that we could help focus on as well. Short answer, yes, we're in partnership with them. They're incredibly innovative with their work in the Upper Valley and across the state.
As I've said, if we can solve child care, Governor, it'd be one hell of a state to live in.
Oh, yes, and housing.
And housing, yes. That too. Thank you.
Great.
Other questions?
Great. Well, welcome to Hypertherm.
Well, I just would like to say thank you for having us in this beautiful room, and can you just tell us a little bit about how the tours will work?
Sure. We have two tour guides. Jessie Tyler is back there in a purple shirt, and Susan Combe is right next to her in a gray shirt. They'll be leading two tour groups, so we'll split you up just evenly. So if you're interested in a tour, they'll come forward, and we'll go into two tour groups. We have some safety glasses in the back, which you need to be on the production floor. You need closed-toed shoes, and we will kind of tour you through and allow you the opportunity to learn more about what we do, and hopefully meet some associates or have some associates meet you, which would be wonderful. So Jessie and Susan.
Thank you again. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Before we go?
No, I think that's a great idea. So let's, if the councilors will indulge us and indulge the time, let's jump right into the business portion of the breakfast meeting, and then we can have plenty of time to do the tour, and we'll meet back here in just a little bit. Okay, there's a few pre-ceremonial items today. Just to review those, for our 10 o'clock meeting, Diane Travis is going to lead in a reading of the Robert Frost poem, Virtues. Oh, that's great. Excellent. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance by Joel Coelho. I think. Joel's going to do the pledge for us. The Upper Valley Music Center Suzuki program is going to do a performance for us. We have a couple commendations today. We come recognizing the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen. The 90th anniversary of the fair will be this Saturday, I think it kicks off. I'll be blowing a horn over at Sunapee, which is an awful sounding horn, I'm not going to lie to you, but we'll be kicking that fair off at 10 a.m. Saturday. And we're also recognizing the Friends of Muskogee Foundation for their work to establish the Friends Feeding Friends, the food pantries, which is in the area here, which is terrific. There is a copy of the breakfast meeting minutes from the July 19th meeting. If everybody could take a quick look at those breakfast meeting minutes, and then I'll entertain a motion to accept them or change them, if so need be.
So moved.
Is there any questions there or edits to be made to the breakfast meeting minutes from July 19th? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those meeting minutes are accepted. Councilor Stevens is going to host our next Governor and Executive Council breakfast meeting on Wednesday, August 23rd, over at the beach. Where else do you want to be on August 23rd than at the beach, Counselor?
The place to be.
That's great. Is it in Hampton? Are we going to Hampton?
We're going to the Shell.
Oh, great, great. Excellent. That'll be fun. Hopefully we have the right weather for it.
We're going to be in the conference room.
Okay. So we'll be indoors. We won't be on the sand. There are two
Can't wear
tables.
your bathing suit down
I'm not running again. I can wear whatever I want. Show for the Speedo.
That's a sight for sore eyes.
It would be. That would be a tragedy. There are two items. The first item is from the Department of Transportation. We talked extensively about all the 67-loader backhoes, form item 31A. My understanding is that there's been a lot of discussion, and likely the best step would be to kill the item, I believe, to maybe change tack.
Yes, Governor. I met with DOT and we went over, crunched the numbers extensively. We would save a lot of money by outright purchasing the backhoes that we are currently leasing, and then we would own them. And I think that's the direction that we're headed in. I've talked to as many counselors as I could reach, and I think there's agreement there that that's the route to go. So we should fill this item today so that the department could move forward with negotiating, purchasing those backhoes. I think they have an idea about how much they would cost, but they could formalize that.
Okay, great. And again, I think just to be clear, we'll have the discussion at the formal meeting, make sure everyone has the data and information. If you wanted to go that route, just to be clear, I cannot withdraw the item. I think it has to be killed to basically allow the department into a different direction. So we'll take that up at the meeting. We also have a tabled item number 43A from the Public Utilities Commission. I didn't know if that was something that, if you had received enough information, if we want to keep it on the table and potentially move forward.
I think I'll be moving to bring it up.
Okay, great. We can open that up for discussion. Any other business for the breakfast meeting portion? Oh, hi. Sorry.
I accidentally left a name off of the confirmations list that was nominated last week, so I have it in the governor's script. If you would entertain, I'll give you all the information, if you wouldn't mind accepting that motion, even though it's not on the list, the confirmations list.
But I did nominate the person.
Yes.
But it's not on the confirmation list. Technically, it wasn't written on the confirmation list.
It's not there yet,
today.
yes.
Okay.
We're going to write it in for you if you'd entertain that motion.
Oh, okay, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, so for everyone who's interested in the tour, we're going to go ahead and do that now. And before we go, I do want to just looking out, recognize some of the elected representatives who are in the room. I see Senator Sue Prentice, welcome, Representative Susan Almy, and Margaret Dry, Tom Corman, and I think City Councilor Karen Leo Hill in the room. So welcome all. We are delighted to be here in Lebanon with you and get to enjoy your community today. So thank you.
Okay, we'll wrap up the breakfast of the business portion of breakfast. Councilor Warmington has a brilliant idea coming up, and a big thanks to all our friends here at Hypertherm for hosting us this morning in the breakfast meeting and allow us to come and opening their facility. A pretty amazing company and an amazing facility opening up to the public to allow this to happen. And it's just an amazing opportunity to go around the state and kind of bring government on the road, good government, efficient government. On the road, a very unique form of government. You don't find this anywhere else in the country. An executive council and governor meetings like this that happen pretty much every other week, open in public. Everybody can come and attend and hear the proceedings, nothing behind closed doors. And the fact that we go the extra mile and then bring it once a year, every councilor gets to choose a location around the state, I think is just an awesome opportunity to showcase all these great things we have in the state and allow folks that traditionally don't get to come down to Concord to see what's happening to really come in and participate and see what's happening. We'll try to keep it both as exciting and not exciting. Sometimes exciting isn't great, but as exciting as we possibly can. It's government, so there's no fireworks all the time. But it is great, and I'm going to turn it over to Councilor Warmington, who frankly just had a brilliant idea of putting all this together. So thanks.
Thank you, Governor. It is a pleasure to be here in Lebanon this morning. We were very pleased to have a tour and a talk from the folks here at Hypertherm. They're really doing some amazing things. And one of the reasons that I really wanted to come to Lebanon is because it really has become a bit of a high-tech hub here. and maybe not so many people really know that, and wanted to showcase that. Hypertherm is part of that this morning. We also had a presentation from Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center about what they're doing, kind of revolutionizing telehealth in our area. They sponsored our breakfast this morning. And we're going to also hear from Mayor Tim McNamara of Lebanon about some of the things that are going on here in Lebanon. So very delighted to be here today. I guess I'd like to start out by introducing my fellow council members. Here on the end from District 1 is Councilor Joe Kenny. And next to me, Councilor Janet Stevens from District 3. Councilor Ted Gatzis from District 4. And Councilor David Wheeler from District 5. And Councilor Cindy Wormington from District 2. We are going to get started here today with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would rise, joining us to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance is Joel Coelho, who is a paramedic, of the Lebanon Fire Department and of the New Hampshire Army National Guard, who has done one overseas deployment and one domestic. And welcome, Joel. Thank you for leading us today.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now we are very pleased to have with us Diane Travis, who is a student, a doctoral of criminal justice at Dartmouth College, but also is very interested in poetry, writes her own poetry. Today she's going to be reading a poem from Robert Frost, Birches, not her own work, but we are delighted to have Diane with us today.
Thank you so much. So Robert Frost enrolled at Dartmouth College in the fall of 1892, but he dropped out before the end of his first term. But he maintained a deep fondness for the college and returned often. And from 1942 to 1947, he was the George Tickner Fellow in the Humanities, and he repeatedly gave lectures and readings at the college until his death in 1963. And this is one of his more well-known poems, Birches. When I see birches bend to left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boy's been swinging them, but swinging doesn't bend them down to stay as ice storms do. Often you must have seen them loaded with ice, a sunny winter morning after a rain. They flicker upon themselves as the breeze rises and turn many-colored as the stir cracks and crazes their enamel. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells, shattering and avalanching on the snow crust. Such heaps of broken glass to sweep away, you'd think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. They are dragged to the withered bracken by the load, and they seem not to break, though once they are bowed so low for long, they never right themselves. You may see their trunks arching in the woods years afterwards, trailing their leaves on the ground like girls on hands and knees that threw their hair before them over their heads to dry in the sun. But I was going to say when truth broke in with all her matter of fact about ice storm, I should prefer to have some boy bend them as he went out and in to fetch the cows. Some boy too far from town to learn baseball, whose only play was what he found himself, summer or winter, and could play alone. One by one he subdued his father's trees by writing them down over and over again, until he took the stiffness out of them, and not one but hung limp, but not one was left for him to conquer. He learned all there was to learn about not launching out too soon, and so not carrying the tree away clear to the ground. He always kept his poise to the top branches, climbing carefully with the same pains you use to fill a cup up to the brim and even above the brim. Then he flung outward, feet first with a swish, kicking his way down through the air to the ground. So was I once myself a swinger of birches? and so I dream of going back to be. It's when I'm weary of considerations, and life is too much like a pathless wood, where your face burns and tickles with the cobwebs broken across it, and one eye is weeping from a twig's having lashed across it open. I'd like to get away from earth a while, and then come back to it and begin all over. May no fate willfully misunderstand me, and half grant what I wish and snatch me away not to return. Earth's the right place for love. I don't know where it's likely to go better. I'd like to go by climbing a birch tree, and climb back black branches up a snow-white trunk toward heaven, till the tree could bear no more, but dipped its top and set me down again. That would be good both going and coming back. One could do worse than be a swinger of birches. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Now, I'd like to call over Erin Smith. Erin is the Assistant Director of the Upper Valley Music Center, and she's going to talk about the presentation that we're going to hear. We're very fortunate to have with us some of the students from the Music Center today.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having us today. My name is Erin, and we're here from the Upper Valley Music Center, which is a nonprofit community music school just down the road in Lebanon. In addition to being a technology hub, Lebanon is also an arts hub. So we have 3 students who are going to perform for you today. Josie, who is 8, Matilda, who is 8, and Eloise, who is 12, and they're joined by 2 of our faculty members, Emma McAllister on violin, and Chin Yu Wang on piano, and they're going to play 3 short selections for us.
Can we do a photo? Will the council like to join us? We can all come over here. That's okay. We'll do a photo over here for the council.
Practicing all summer.
Yeah. Here, come on in here.
Yeah, we're getting
All right, we'll have everyone right here first in 3, 2, 1. And then we'll look at Paul. And then right over here. Perfect. Thank you all. Great. Great job. Great job.
kids. Talented kids.
Okay, always great to get our meetings kicked off on the right foot with a little music. Oh, sorry. Yeah, of course. Sure.
Just Mayor Tim McNamara, if you could come forward. Mayor's here today to join us and say a few words. I think we had some other elected representatives in the room earlier. I just want to, I don't know if they're all still here, but Senator Sue Prentice is with us, Representative Sue Almy, Tom Foreman, and Margaret Dry, and the mayor, of course. So we just want to thank you all for being here, and happy to have you with us today.
Thank you. Good morning, and Governor and Councilors, welcome to Lebanon, as always. Love to see you here. I know a couple of the councilors personally. The rest of you I've yet to meet, but it's nice to welcome you here to our city. My name is Tim McNamara. I'm a native of Lebanon. My family settled here 175 years or so ago after departing Ireland during the famine. So I have a long history here in the city. I was elected to the City Council in 2015, and I've been serving as the mayor since 2019. I have a couple of my fellow councilors here today with me. If you please stand. Karen Leo Hill, Councilor Karen Leo Hill, longest serving city councilor in history.
In Lebanon.
She's been doing it since she was 15. And Councilor Debbie Hill, one of our newer councilors, but has been a huge asset to the council in the couple of terms that he's been here. So thanks, folks. Just want to give you a little bit of background on Lebanon for those of you who may not be particularly familiar with it. And I've got lots of numbers here, or I wouldn't read this. So let's go back to 1950. In 1950, the resident population of Lebanon was about 8,500 people. By 2020, 70 years later, we've grown to just over 14,300, which is an increase of 60% over 70 years, or something less than 1% a year. That has changed. The current 2023 population estimate for the city is about 16,400. This is an increase of 3,000 people over the past 3 years, and equivalent to almost 22% overall, or an average of 7% per year. So you can see that our population has jumped dramatically in the last several years, and we expect that to continue. But it's a whole new world for us, trying to accommodate that kind of population growth over a short period of time. So as you can expect, our growth in population has gone hand in hand with a rapid increase in our housing stock. As of 2020, the census again, there were 7,200 housing units in Lebanon, which was an increase of 552 units, or about 8% over the 10 years prior to the 2020 census. Compare that to now. So between 2020 and 2022, an additional 1,500 units of housing were approved in the city, of which over 1,000 have been either completed or under construction. So that's just a huge rate of increase for us in housing. It's important to note, however, that the vast majority of these units that were constructed over recent years have been market rate apartments, sort of large, big-scale apartment projects, with very little constructed in the way of owner-occupied housing, and I'll get back to that in a minute. So let's talk about our economy for a second. Not surprisingly, the recent very rapid population growth in the city has been fueled in part by our very robust and diverse economic base. It includes Dartmouth-Hitchcock, you heard from them this morning, and affiliated medical facilities. But it also includes a lot of high-tech manufacturing by internationally known firms such as Hypertherm, which is founded here in the Upper Valley, and you probably saw the photograph as you came in of the little garage that they started in 1968, I believe. But also Timken Aerospace, formerly Split Ball Bearing, they've been here for many, many decades. Geocon, Fujifilm Diamatics, Astronics Luminescent Systems, Bond Optics, and a number of other companies. One of the more recent changes is sort of the upsurge in biotech. The largest player in our biotech sector is represented by Novo Nordisk. They're based in Denmark, of course, but they manufacture a variety of biopharmaceuticals at a large and expanding facility near the Lebanon Airport in our tech park. We're also home to a number of smaller but growing biotech firms, such as Adimab, BioXcel, and Avitime. Many of these local manufacturers started right here in Lebanon or in the Upper Valley in general. And we have the Dartmouth Regional Technology Center here, as you probably know, which serves as a critical incubator for new startups. So we're continuously getting this inflow of new startup companies, particularly in the biotech sector, and we expect that to expand significantly over the next few years. So while we're based with a vibrant economy here in Lebanon and in the Upper Valley in general, maintaining the health of that economy is not without its challenges, as you can expect. Even with the rapid growth in construction that I've mentioned, the availability of affordable housing continues to be a major problem. In Lebanon alone, we have almost 500 units of subsidized rental housing, but the demand greatly exceeds the supply, and market rate rentals are unaffordable to many of our residents. The opportunity for home ownership, which we consider to be critical, is very limited due to high prices and a lack of supply, virtually nothing on the market. We at the city recognize that this is a critical gap in our housing stock, and we're actively working to help facilitate strategies such as cottage communities and accessory dwelling units in order to expand the opportunity for affordable owner-occupied units. Another issue is affordable quality child care, and I know that's an issue statewide. We're currently working to secure outside funding to construct a facility on city land, again near our airport technology park, that would provide daycare for up to 200 children that would be operated by the Boys and Girls Club of New Hampshire. It is our goal in city government to work in partnership with our local businesses, large and small, to address these and other impediments to creating and maintaining economic growth in the city, while maintaining the quality of life that we have here that's so important to us all and that attracts so many people. So with that, welcome again to the City of Lebanon. We look forward to working with you in the future, and happy to discuss anything with you at any time. Thank you.
Okay, great. One of the other opportunities that we always have at our council meetings is kind of highlighting all the good things and the opportunities that the local economy has and the businesses have. But a lot of times it's just the nonprofits, the individual citizens and the friends and the neighbors that just stand up and see a need and fill a gap. And it really is kind of person to person. It's not just government coming in, but it's everyone kind of helping each other. And there was an amazing opportunity with a group here. They are called the Friends of Mascoma Foundation. They do a lot of different things. Primarily, though, the one we're highlighting today is really surrounds food insecurity, right? Just the idea of just helping, making sure everyone has an opportunity, especially around kids and schools, if there is a need there, and them being able to fill a gap. So we want to kind of recognize and honor them. And so if the folks from the Friends of Mascoma want to come up and join us up here for their commendation, let's give them a hand. You guys want to talk a little bit about what you do before I just read the commendation? And like how it started? I thought how it kind of came to fruition was pretty neat.
Hi, I'm Kate Plumley Stewart. I'm the interim executive director and former vice president of Friends of Mascoma, and here with me today is Kaylee Felix, who started out as a junior member and continues to volunteer with Friends of Mascoma.
So we started out as a small foundation with a group of friends who saw a need in the Mascoma School District, and we kicked off and we thought we were going to do some mini grants and do some public art projects and give out some scholarships, and that was really exciting for us. And this was a while ago, so Kaylee wasn't quite as tall. And so one day we were sitting in one of our meetings, and Kaylee's mom, Beth Felix, was a board member for years with us, and she asked Kaylee to tell us about why she was giving away her lunch every day. And so if you've ever heard one of these stories from your kids or someone in your family or friend group, they're always very hard. And getting to the bottom of the why is really challenging, and it takes a significant amount of bravery on the part of a younger child to tell you their story and tell you the hardships their friends are enduring with food insecurity. So Kaylee told us how much of her food she was giving away, and it was pretty much all of it. So we pulled together a group. There was a wonderful farm in Enfield, Blue Ox Farm, who sold at Whole Foods in the Co-op at the time. There were farmers, there were business people, folks within the school district. So we had long-term teachers, we had consumer science teachers, and the folks on our board. And we sat down and said, what can we do to turn this around? And it's been a long project, but we decided as a board we would do a major pivot and wrap food insecurity programs into what became the 3 Friends Feeding Friends food pantries. So we took over operation of the town pantry in Enfield. We started a warehouse and an office space in Canaan, and we were fortunate enough during the high school renovation project at Mascoma to get an actual food pantry. So we have one of the only in-school food pantries in the state of New Hampshire. The in-school food pantry is on the campus with Mascoma High School and Indian River School, so it serves those schools. And then the Canaan and Enfield elementary schools pull directly from our pantry. We put a significant amount of food out. We de-identify all of the data, and so there's no income requirement. So any of the about 1,082 students can access the pantry, and Kaylee has helped us significantly, be it stocking the pantry, which is not super glamorous, right? Keeping it organized, letting us know when we're running low on things, letting us know really great feedback. And she's graduated, so we're going to have to find some new eyes and ears, and she's gone on to, appropriately, early childhood education. But we're very excited to continue feeding these students and their families, right? Because healthy families and healthy students make for a great educational process. So thank you for this opportunity today. We appreciate it.
So we have a commendation recognizing the Friends of Mascoma Foundation. Whereas the Friends of Mascoma Foundation was formed by a group of community advocates in 2014 committed to supporting the needs of the Mascoma Valley Regional School District, which includes the towns of Canaan, Dorchester, Enfield, Grafton, and Orange, and supports the initiatives in the district that foster educational development and nutritional well-being for students and their families. And whereas in 2016, the Friends of Mascoma rolled out their Friends Feeding Friends program after learning of the generosity of one of their junior members, Kaylee Felix, who had been giving away her lunch and snacks to other students coming to school with little or nothing to eat. And whereas learning of this act of kindness from Kaylee sparked the board of the foundation and their volunteers into action, and they began to partner with a group of nutrition and food stakeholders in the community, including teachers, staff, professional farmers, and business leaders, to create the Friends Feeding Friends food pantries. And whereas, since its inception, the program has grown to partner with the New Hampshire Food Bank, Willing Hands, and many other organizations, and during the 2022 and 23 school year, they provided emergency food and snacks to over 1,000 students in the district, as well as 120 vacation and holiday break boxes to families experiencing food insecurity. And whereas, in addition to the wonderful work done by the food pantry, the Friends of Mascoma Foundation also awarded over $20,000 in scholarships to graduating seniors and over $2,800 in mini grants to support public education. Now, therefore, I, Christopher T. Sununu, Governor of the State of New Hampshire, do hereby commend the Friends of Mascoma Foundation for their dedication and hard work to the communities they serve, and wish you continued success in the future. Thank you. You want to do a photo? Great. Here, why don't you guys come up to the front a little bit? We'll get the counselors in. Yep.
right, and everyone right here for me. 3, 2, 1. Perfect. All good down there?
Yeah.
Great. Great. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good job.
Nice meeting
It is that time of year again also when we get to celebrate our friends of the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen. The Craftsman Fair is this coming weekend. It'll be kicking off at 10 a.m. With a very loud and quasi-obnoxious horn blowing by myself, the governor, and some others. And Miriam Carter, who's been really running the organization for some time, is joining us. So Miriam, do you want to come on up and talk a little bit about the Craftsman Fair, the amazing opportunity? It's just right down the road here at Sunapee. And everything it has to offer, and the guarantee that you have given that the weather will be perfect.
Okay, from your mouth to the weather god's ears. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for joining us every year. You have been a great part of our celebration. I apologize to your staff, because I know you blow that horn at other times of the year, beckoning them. So, many years ago, Joe Tucker, who is a longstanding member of the League, created a tradition of asking craftspeople to create horns out of glass, metal, wood, whatever they can be made out of. We've gifted some to the governor. They're not very pretty, and they do make a really bad noise, but we celebrate that at the opening and closing of the fair every day. So it's our tradition. We'll be there for 9 days at the beautiful Mount Sunapee Resort. And I just have to say something that I don't think a lot of you probably know, that we actually attract over 20,000 people annually. When Mr. Steve Dupree is around, who's the chair of the Courier Museum, I always have to say that we bring in 20,000 over 9 days. The Courier, an amazing organization, brings in 60,000 over the course of the year. So you can understand the impact of this important event and this organization. We also have 7 fine craft galleries throughout the state, and our job is to celebrate craft every day and the makers of craft, so it's our pleasure. So that's a shameless self-promotion, and now I have to do a little acknowledgement of our participation and support from the state. We are really grateful that we have partnerships with several commissioners. I was a former full-time working artist. Never would I think I'd be hanging out with the governor blowing horns or calling up commissioners on speed dial. But back in 2020, when we actually, Vail took over the lease with the state of New Hampshire, Commissioner Stewart helped broker that deal. They came in, and they're a publicly traded company, so they can do what they need to do, especially in the area of Wi-Fi. They don't believe in having Wi-Fi on their property. So we had a problem because the former leasee had it. 2020 opening of the fair, I said to the governor, Governor, I've got a problem. I don't think my Wi-Fi is going to work very well. Just as a note, we sell over $3 million worth of merchandise or tickets at this event. So that was a big impact. And yes,
and it's not in cash.
No, it's not in cash. Very little cash. So the governor started a conversation at that point with Commissioner Caswell. That led to a greater conversation with Commissioner Goulet, Commissioner Stewart. We now have a great partnership going, and we're trying to create an event this year, which is an educational opportunity. And remember, we're a 501c3, so that's what we do. Didn't know I'd be doing it around IT, but it's about IT. But we're creating an opportunity on Thursday the 10th to invite tech leaders, and I hope there are several of you here that may take advantage of this, to come and see the behind the scenes of what it takes to produce this event. It's actually really important because this singular issue of having Wi-Fi at Mount Sunapee Resort in a thorough, safe, productive way, or whatever the language is around security, is really imperative to the future success of this event. So we're inviting tech leaders to come forward, meet with us, talk with us. Commissioner Goulet, Commissioner Stewart will be there. We want to be creative in finding a solution to fund this and also to support this. This is a legacy organization, 90 years, at a time when many craft shows around the country, the fine ones, are actually not attracting a lot of people. We actually continue to bring a steady 20,000 people in, and that has a lot to do about the mighty but small state of New Hampshire. Also, great appreciation to Commissioner Caswell for his contribution this year. His department is helping support the Wi-Fi issue this year, and also Travel and Tourism does a great program with called the JPP program. We couldn't market the way we market without that support. We have billboards in Boston, Portsmouth, Hooksett, as well as great radio promotions as well as print. So please come see us. I'm going to do some shameless self-promotion and leave postcards in the back of the room on the food table. And that's all I have.
Great. Well, thank you. And if you haven't gone, I mean, I really encourage you. They have everything from hundreds of craftsmen and women, and $5 to $10 items to $15,000 to $20,000 items. I mean, the quality is really mind-blowing. I mean, it really is incredible when you see these amazing pieces, glasswork and metalwork and woodwork, sitting under these tents. And it's like, I mean, people come from all over the country because it's just the highest quality stuff you can find.
They do.
Really neat.
Several years ago, we did a poll of the parking lot, and I said, let's look how many license plates from out-of-state. We had 32 out-of-state license plates, so I'll factor in, okay, let's say half of those were from rental companies, but still to attract beyond the New England states. We had people coming from California, North Carolina, New York. They're always messaging us. They're on their way. And before I go, I'm going to, because I know you're going to commend this event, but I have gifts for you, and just for transparency's sake, I checked the rules, and they are within the guidelines of gifting you.
What do we got?
So every year we do the annual ornament, which we think of as an annual ornament, not as a Christmas ornament, just so you know. So we sell it year-round as birthday gifts and all sorts of gifts. Counselors, I want you to be aware that there's only one way to put this ornament in this box. So
Don't jam it in. Don't stick it in.
Put the bottom. So this is by Kevin Turgeon. It is in multicolored woods. It's a reindeer. No, we don't have reindeer in New Hampshire, but we made a wonderful little story about it. Kevin has created 5,000 of these. So, and it's a commitment that we take to our membership every year to create a competition, and we pick the best designs, so they're on sale at our 7 galleries throughout the state at this time, but you were all gifted one. Just put the butt in, end in first. I know. The detail you probably didn't expect to hear. So
I appreciate it. And just for clarification, if my kids are watching, I've told them that there are reindeer here, we just don't see them. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. We should advertise that, by the way. So we do have a commendation recognizing the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen, their 90th anniversary this year, whereas in 2023 it will mark the 90th anniversary of the annual League of New Hampshire Craftsmen's Fair in August. And whereas each year 200 artists converge on the Mount Sunapee Resort in Newbury, and visitors are able to meet and talk with the artists about their work, watch live demonstrations as they create many items on site and share their creative process with the public, who marvel at the talent and the skill they bring to their respective crafts. And whereas in 1932, the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen, the League of New Hampshire Arts and Crafts was established to promote craft in New Hampshire, and in 1933 the first craft fair was held, making it the oldest craft fair still operating in the country. And whereas in 1968 the organization was rebranded the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen and is recognized today as one of the country's foremost fine arts organizations, boasting a membership of more than 700 juried craftspeople, producing exceptional contemporary and traditional crafts across a wide range of media, setting the standard for fine hand crafts that are valued for their creativity, authenticity, and technical expertise. And whereas throughout the course of the year, the League is devoted to recruiting new artisans and expanding and encouraging mentoring programs between members and new artists. And whereas the League is truly one of New Hampshire's great treasures, and the artists who are part of the League reflect the soul of the Granite State, with their inspiring work reaching people throughout the state, the country, and the world. Now therefore I, Christopher T. Sununu, Governor of the State of New Hampshire, do hereby commend the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen for all you do to support and highlight the amazing artists and craftsmen in the Granite State, and join with you as you celebrate your 90th anniversary. Thank you. We got to get a photo. We're all about publicity. Would the council like to join us for?
All right, everyone right here first, and 3, 2, 1. Great, now let's, did you get it?
I got it.
Great, we're good to go? Great, no experience.
Thank you. Thank you. Hope to see you all there. Thank you very much. Thank you.
If you want to show up, you just have it. I'll give you more, and you can have it.
Not my district anymore.
Okay, so moving, thank you. So moving forward, I am going to officially call the meeting of the Governor and Executive Council to order. I'm going to begin by asking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from July 19th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Is there, we have a motion, second, any questions or anything to change on those meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of accepting the meeting minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next, from the Office of the Secretary of State, we have our civil commissions. Could I begin by getting a motion to adopt the list of civil commissions?
So moved.
Second.
So motion second. Any additional names to place on the list? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the list of civil commissions as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The list of civil commissions is confirmed, approved, I should say. We do have a few confirmations to move through today. I'm going to begin by asking for a motion to confirm Jason Bacchus of Piermont to the Advisory Board on Private Investigative Agencies, Bail Recovery Agents, and Security Services.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Jason is confirmed. Can I please have a motion to confirm Lori Weaver of Concord as the Commissioner of the Department of Health and Human Services?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Kenny?
Well, we have to say a few good words. She's our commissioner. I just want to commend the interim commissioner, now hopefully soon to be commissioner, Lori Weaver, for all the work that she's done up to this point. And I know we were on the road with oral health issues in my district, and you're going to see a mobile dental van going all around the state, and that's because of her and her staff's efforts. It's a very important topic for the state. So I thank you for that, and thank you for being responsive.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Lori is confirmed. Could I have a motion to confirm Charles Southard of Concord to the Current Use Advisory Board?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Charles is confirmed. Can I now have a motion to confirm Adele Baumann of Dover as the Director of the Division of Arts for the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Kenny?
I always consider this executive director position for the Arts Council to be a very critical position because it's an economic development driver for the state. The arts, in my area in particular, are very important. This person, Adele Baumann of Dover, has a very unique background. Check out her resume. She's had many years in behavioral health, has run a very successful arts event program within her organization, and some has worked at DCYF, who's worked as a social worker, but actually who started out in college as pursuing photography and pursuing graphic design work, and now she's coming full circle, and I think she's going to bring some very unique talents to this position, so I was excited to sit down and talk to her for a while.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of Adele, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, she is confirmed. Could I have a motion to confirm James Valquet of Newbury to the Enhanced 911 Commission?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, James is confirmed. Could I have a motion to confirm Cecily McNair of Epsom to the Enhanced 911 Commission?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Cecily's confirmed. Could I have a motion to confirm Michael Alphelberg of Dover to the Higher Education Commission?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Michael's confirmed. Could I have a motion to confirm Tiffany Grade of Moultonborough to the Lakes Management Advisory Committee?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That Tiffany is confirmed. Could I have a motion to confirm G.D. Forrester of Meredith to the New Hampshire Land and Community Heritage Authority Board of Directors.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Jeannie is confirmed. Could I have a motion to confirm Kimberly Shirtliff of Auburn to the Occupational Therapy Governing Board?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Kim is confirmed. Could I have a motion to confirm James Jalbert of Rollinsford to the Site Evaluation Committee?
So moved.
Second.
Come back to it.
So let's do this. Any questions on Jane? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that James Jalbert is confirmed. Let me just double check. Are we doing it there? Are we doing Mitchell? Oh, okay. I thought maybe we had the board. Okay, great. Okay, could I have a motion to confirm Mitchell Thayer of Berlin to the Rivers Management Advisory Committee?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mitchell is confirmed. Could I have a motion to confirm Brendan Finn of Newfield to the State Veterans Council?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Kenny?
I approve. He's a Marine governor. I vote yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, that Brendan is confirmed. And then one that we did leave off the list, and I apologize, I'll conclude by asking for a motion to confirm Michael Gordon of Peterborough to the Board of Optometry.
So moved.
Any discussion? Everyone wants Peterborough?
Yeah.
Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Michael is confirmed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate that. More importantly, Mitchell. Appreciate that. But we've been listening and panicking. We do have a few nominations. I'd like to read into the record. As Chief Justice of the Superior Court, I nominate Mark Howard of Manchester. As the Commissioner for the Insurance Department, I nominate David Betancourt of Salem. As the Director of the Division of Administration for the Department of Corrections, I nominate Lisa Stone of Manchester. As the Division Director for the Department of Education, I nominate Caitlin Davis of Concord. To the Judicial Council, I nominate Guido Scala of Wakefield. To the Personal Appeals Board, I nominate Charles Russell of Concord. To the Police Commission of Nashua, I nominate Gwen Kralow of Nashua. As a Justice to the New Hampshire Circuit Court, I nominate Tanya Sponey of Brookline and Dorothy Walk of Norwood. And that concludes the nominations for today. So moving on, we have our consent calendar agenda. Could I begin by asking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
Move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or requests for items to be removed for further discussion from the consent calendar?
Yes, Governor. Items 1E and 4K.
1E, 4K. Thank you, Counselor. Any other items?
4M.
4M, Counselor Wheeler. Any other items or questions on the consent calendar? Okay. With seeing no further requests for additional discussion, all in favor of adopting the consent calendar agenda with the exception of items 1E, 1E, 4K, and 4M?
Correct.
Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I get a motion to adopt the consent calendar agenda 1E?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions on item 1E from Health and Human Services?
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioner. I apologize. I normally make these phone calls a couple days in advance of the meeting and give you a heads up if I have any questions, but I'm babysitting my granddaughter this week, and I didn't have a chance to do that. So I just noticed in this organization that this is the first year that we are participating in the organization, and there are only 6 other states participating. So when I see that, I just wonder why this organization, why have you chosen to participate?
Sure, I'd be happy to have Trish Tilley, who oversees the contract.
Good morning, Trish Tilley, Director of Public Health. Good morning, everyone. We are participating in this organization. It is brand new. It is a group of public health nurses from around the country who are coming together to start sharing their expertise and their insight, really coming off the pandemic. They are understanding that they are, quite frankly, a force to be reckoned with, and a group that really needs to address their own particular issues within the nursing field in doing the sort of work that they do that's very different than clinical bedside nursing.
I just noted that it states in here that it's been around since 1935 as an advisory group and changed its name in 2012, so I didn't realize it was a brand new group.
There is a new sense of organizing around it for states to become members.
Thank you.
Further discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of item 1, consent calendar agenda item 1P, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. Could I have a motion to adopt consent calendar agenda item 4K?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on 4K. This item is from the Department of Justice.
Morning.
Good morning. I noticed in reading this resume that this is a litigator who has on his resume his primary work over the last many years has been in the New Civil Liberties Alliance and then the American Jurist Link. And he states in here that in his work that he initiated litigation in state and federal courts to relegate the administrative state to its proper place in the constitutional order of government. So just wondering, what does that mean?
Well, I respectfully, I think you'd have to ask Attorney DeGrandis, but certainly as a member of the Department of Justice, he will not be making his own determinations about the proper role of the administrative state. That would be a determination made by the Attorney General, and Attorney Grandis would be expected to carry out General Formona's directives in that regard.
So was there discussion with him regarding that does he intend to use his new position to relegate the administrative state to its proper place in the constitutional order of government?
I was not present for his interview, but I have talked to my colleague who's the head of the Civil Litigation Unit, and it doesn't sound to me like there's any plans to do any such thing. He's going to be a member of the Civil Litigation Unit. He'll be taking cases as directed by the director of the Civil Litigation Unit, and I was not made aware of any conversations around, I forget the exact phrase, the proper relegation of the administrative state. That would be if the Department of Justice were to do such a thing, that wouldn't be directed by someone at Attorney DeGrandis' station.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of consent calendar agenda item 4K, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
With that, 4K is approved. Could I have a motion to adopt consent calendar agenda item 4M?
Move.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Councilor Wheeler?
Thank you, Governor. I got a question about this, the salary for this particular person. It seems unusually high for what we usually see for an attorney with this little experience. Can you justify that for me, please?
To me, it looks to be relatively in line with the sort of bottom of the pay scale for attorneys, as they've been reset basically with it, there's essentially a roughly 10% increase across the board. And I think that carrying that forward, this looks standard to me for sort of the entry level.
But we've had entry level at 57 and 60,000, and this is at 83,000 for someone that's been practicing a year, fresh out of law school.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the 57 and 63 and at what time those might have occurred, so I'm happy to try to get more information for you on that from the chief of staff or from the general.
Is there, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Is there a pay scale that the Department of Justice uses? I know they're a little separate from everybody else by law. But
Yeah, so there is a sort of informal pay scale, and the goal of the general with the deputy and the chief of staff is to try to make sure that attorneys of commensurate experience are paid similarly. And we do take into account their private sector experience, if any, in their areas of expertise, the area of law they're going into, and every effort is made to make sure that there's consistency across the board. So I was unfortunately not privy to the discussions of how this number was arrived at, but that's my understanding of the process, and I know they're very careful about that because it's important for morale that the folks feel like their pay is commensurate with their experience and with their peers.
Governor, can we just table this till the next meeting? Just to get that, let's get that pay scale, because this really looks like out of character for me, for someone with this little experience.
Okay, so is that a motion? I'll take that as a motion to table. Is
Governor, can I
oh,
just,
sure. Of course.
I always like to ask what the implication of tabling is. Is this person already on the payroll?
Not to my knowledge. I can try to check
An
quickly.
offer's been extended, are they, what's the status?
I mean, typically, what I know, I can speak to what's typical. Typically, a start date is given based on the anticipated approval date. So, what would be standard would be he would be expected to start until the pay period following the approval. So, I think my understanding is the ramification would be the start date would have to be moved back to accommodate the appointment.
Yeah, I do want to note that at the last meeting, the Attorney General's office brought forward new pay scales for all of the attorneys in the office and noted the difficulty that you've had in recruiting and retaining staff.
And actually, thank you for mentioning that, Councilor Warmington. I know in the reset that I talked about, Councilor Wheeler, and the fact that the salaries were increased across the board. I know there was a skewing of that increase towards the bottom end of the range because there was a thought that the sort of entry levels were not competitive to entice people who would otherwise maybe go into the private sector. So it may be that this lower sort of bottom is a reflection of that sort of readjustment.
Okay, so we do have a motion to table. Is there a second? No second? Okay.
Withdraw motion.
Okay. Whatever you want. Okay, so there's no second. Any other discussion on this? Okay. All in favor of consent calendar agenda item 4M, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, with that, the item gets approved.
Absolutely.
With that, that concludes our consent calendar agenda. Give me a moment. Okay. Moving on, we have our regular agenda. I'm going to begin by asking for a motion to adopt regular agenda items 6 through 8 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Office of the Commissioner.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? For the Commissioner, not the interim Commissioner. 4-star. Nope. Okay, all in favor of items 6 through 8, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I have a motion to adopt agenda items 9 and 10 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Office of Public Health Services?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion? Steve?
Agenda item 10, please. Thank you, Commissioner. I'm only seeing with this contract, this agreement, I believe it's the page 2 of the P37. I'm not seeing an entire contract package for agenda item 10. And that is for...
That's for the equipment, right?
Exactly, but not even a complete P37.
I'm not sure if we need a P37 for the equipment. I'll let Nathan answer
We have
that.
page 2 of 2 though. And are they registered in the state?
So this request here, this is actually the authority for the Department of Administrative Services to purchase all the commodities on behalf of the state. We changed, or you changed the MOP this past fall, I believe it was. So any purchase over $250,000 would now need to come before you. And so we're making that request on behalf of the department. And I believe that's the reason why it may be looking different. I'm not sure if there's a copying error. I don't know exactly what you have in front of you there. So those look like the standard terms, I believe, from the DAS template. Is that correct, Commissioner Arlinghouse? And those look different from the standard P37 terms, which is for the service contract. That's for the purchasing commodities contract. That's why it looks different.
Thank you.
Of course.
Further discussion on any of these items? Okay, all in favor of items 9 and 10, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed on number 9?
Thank you. With that, the items are approved. I'm now going to ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 11 and 12 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Behavioral Health.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda item 12A from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Long-Term Supports and Services?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? No, Councilor Stevens, sorry.
Good morning. So this contract came to us because there was no response to the RFP for Atkinson and Nashua, and Community Crossroads is going to continue providing services until 8/31/23, the end of the month. Do we have another vendor in place? I'm seeing a description that the department has set up an interim plan for families to access resources while the department solicits for these services. Is there going to be any potential gap with this agency?
No, there shouldn't be. I mean, the point is to go with them until we can procure another, or put it out for procurement again.
Well, even with it ending on 8/31, we'll have somebody ready to go in September?
Yes. Chris Ansello, Associate Commissioner. We are working with a couple of existing vendors, and also department staff will fill a gap if there is any.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of item 12A, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, item 12A is approved. Well, that concludes Health and Human Services. Your first official meeting as Commissioner. I think they're letting you off easy. Great job. I'm now going to ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 13 through 20 from our friends at the Department of Transportation. So moved. Any discussion? DOT. Councilor Kenny.
Thank you. Number 14?
Good morning, councilors. For the record, William Katz, Commissioner for DOT. So number 14.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
This is an agreement with Governor Council to pay small claims for the next fiscal year within DOT. And I guess my question is how much money is set aside for small claims? And do we anticipate a lot of small claims because of the storm or because other trends that are going on around the state?
I apologize. I wish I had, as I was reading it this morning, I was trying to get what last year's total was of storm claims. Typically, there are a handful or so that we pay out. So my rough estimate would be probably not more than $20,000 or $25,000, and that would probably be a high estimate. Most of the claim issues tend to be things to do with our winter maintenance or paint striping. People that get paint on their cars file claims, or if something with snowplow damage or things like that. So the storm damage and things like that would not necessarily fall in this category of small claims. If there's anything more substantial, they would go to the Secretary of State and the Board of Claims. These are the smaller claims under $2,000 that the department has authority to deal with through the Transportation Appeals Board.
Thank you for that. So it's the Board of Claims, anything that's over $600 would go to the Board of Claims?
Anything over $2,000.
Anything over $2,000, okay. Because I have a constituent who's going to head to the Board of Claims, so I just want to give you a heads up.
Okay.
Going to bypass her, I think, and head right to the Board of Claims.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Stevens?
Commissioner, in regards to agenda item 16, this sale of easement of state-owned property in Merrimack, this easement, which we're offering for a sewer line, is within the 19-acre property, which was purchased in '88 for over $7 million. So the current status of the property, and how does this sewer line impact future resale of the land in terms of devaluation?
I think the value of the easement is quantified in respect to the impact of the value of the future resale of the property. So that easement value would be reflective of what potential impact of the value of the property for resale. It's probably very, very minor because it's an underground sewer easement. It's under the driveway in the area that accesses the bigger part of that property. So it's probably a pretty negligible impact on the overall usage of that property. The value also to us, just for background, we kind of required them, it's preferable to us to have the sewer outside of the right-of-way rather than right along Route 3 in that area. So this is it's a win-win, but it's positive for us to, we are in our district when they reviewed that sewer location and service line, we requested them to be outside the right-of-way. So.
Thank you. Another question? Agenda item 19, which is the sale of 0.7 acres for $400. In '87, the cost per acre was over $5,000. And this price was just determined in November of 2022. It seems excessively low based on what it was calculated for in '87.
I can look into more detail. I know based on the map and stuff, it is a very small piece of property. It is really only a value to the adjoining property owner, so I'm sure that the current valuation reflects that status.
Thank you.
Councilor Katz?
Thank you, Governor. We've missed you the last 2 meetings, so you haven't been able to talk about 4A. Is there an item on the agenda for 4A?
Some of the contemplated awards deal with property settlements with property owners relative to 4A as we continue acquiring the property to build the court.
That's 15?
Item 15.
Yeah, item 15. So we continue to proceed with the design and proceed with the right-of-way acquisition for the next couple of the next project. And if you drive the corridor, you see that the current ongoing construction project is coming along. The abutments are done, and the median pier are coming up. The sound walls are going up. So a lot of good progress. Hopefully, if the rain holds off, there'll be even better progress. So.
And Another item, the last meeting we talked about graffiti. And if we had money to go out and pay for graffiti on 293 for the removal of it. Now, I know that there's some companies that do that directly. I don't know if anybody's come up with an answer for that.
We will have an answer for you. We are working on it. We put our Turnpike folks onto looking into that. We were just getting some additional information, but that would be our intent to put together a contract to look at some graffiti removal, particularly along the 93, 293 corridors.
For the next meeting?
We won't have the contract for the next meeting, but I can have you an update for the next meeting.
Okay.
Our goal would probably be to put together some sort of contract. We'd have to pick up the funding for it and do something this fall that could be awarded and put out to address the issues early next spring.
I would hope we would get it done in the fall. So I would hope, if not this meeting, the next meeting that's being held in Manchester, that we would get an answer.
Okay. I will have I'll have an answer. It'll take a little bit of time to put a contract and things together and bid it and stuff. But your concerns are noted, and we are working on it.
Governor, are your concerns noted too?
My concerns are very much noted on graffiti. I hate the graffiti.
Thank you.
I did think it's awful. Absolutely awful.
Do you think we can get them to get us a contract?
I'm very hopeful.
Thank you.
DOT has never let us down before.
Yep.
I know they've done a great job with 4A. I just hope
Yeah.
the graffiti is just as much a stand-up.
Are we ranked as like some of the best roads in the country now?
We are.
Right? We're like one of the tops.
Yep.
We've gone from like typically not very great to now ranked one of the tops. You guys knocking it out of the park. So we'll make our great roads look even better.
Thank you, Carl.
Other questions for the DOT? Councilor Kenny.
Governor, you gave me an opening here with our great roads. So we just suffered, you could arguably say, a small natural disaster. We still have some roads that are impassable, and we know that we're doing inventory and working with emergency management, and the local highway departments to try to collect all that data. Is there still 12 roads that are impassable? I know Route 113.
I think all of the roads are open and passable. Do you know Dave Rodriguez, Assistant Commissioner? As far as I knew, at the end of last week, we had them all open. Is that
Good morning. They are all open to local traffic and emergency vehicles. We're finishing up Route 140 from Alton to Gilmanton and Route 113 in Madison. But they're all open and passable to local vehicles and emergency vehicles. I'd be surprised 140 and 113 should be open any day now. I just don't know the day for sure.
And I know that with emergency management, they're coordinating with DOT and safety and so forth, but I know, Governor, we were talking about local funding issues the other day. I was speaking to you about this exceptional disaster relief loan process, and there's two ways to approach it, I guess. One is once all the paperwork gets into FEMA and to the President's office, they can declare kind of a natural disaster, and that declaration would hopefully come down the road, if you will. But at the same time, a lot of these small communities are really being financially impacted, and they don't necessarily have the wherewithal because their budgets weren't programmed for that. And so I'm just wondering, Governor, which should communities anticipate any type of declaration or anything that the governor's office might do with regards to trying to expedite some of these maybe opportunities for loans for communities so they can pay back for these construction projects at the local level? I know I can pinpoint probably 6 or 7 communities in Carroll County that just did not budget for this flood and the road damage and culvert bridge damage. And so I know there's two thoughts. One is to perhaps just wait until the declaration comes and then maybe that disaster relief loan process would be available, or we do a declaration now and say, this has been a statewide disaster, and then, we could potentially begin that process now. But communities are really suffering, and I don't know if that's, an answer that DOT can give, or emergency management, or how we're going to proceed into the future. But I just know that there have been some communities that reached out to me and said, we need help.
So the paperwork has all been filed. We anticipate a response from FEMA within a matter of weeks, 3, 4, 5 weeks, something like that. And then at that time, those funds can be released. The only declaration that the state could possibly do would be a formal state of emergency. I mean, the only time we've done that, as a lot of folks know, is the pandemic. As tough as I know some of the situations are, obviously this is not on the level of the pandemic. And knowing that we have pushed very strongly to get a response from the federal government in the next few weeks, I feel very confident that just in a matter of weeks, not years or months or anything like that, but in a matter of 3, 4, 5 weeks, is what our anticipation is, that we should get a response out of there that would then allow those low-interest, zero-interest loans to then become available.
Yeah, the only there's kind of doubting Toms out there in some of these municipalities, such as Swansea and Acworth, to wait for money from FEMA that they still don't have from 2 years ago from flood damage. So federal government needs to really step it up and really push along this declaration, along with obviously all the FEMA paperwork, because these communities, the longer they wait, the more uncertainty that's going to be created at the local level. And so, again, we'll keep pounding on the federal delegation's desk to expedite this. But if there's any way to encourage them, Governor, to push them forward to get this thing done, I think it's important for our small
I think Rob and the folks at DOT we're in literally constant contact with them on a daily basis. So I don't know, Commissioner Quinn, I don't know, because you guys have, just on the health and safety aspect, I know, just to be clear, we have put a letter back out. There were statements made that people couldn't get emergency services to their homes and things of that nature, which I believe we've confirmed. No, everybody has emergency access services. I think that's a really important point. That there was a lot of misinformation out there on that. And I think, frankly, to be somewhat irresponsibly so, to try to force the issue. The issue is being forced, and I sat with the director of FEMA just a month ago to talk about speeding things up on this, and so that's why I do feel fairly confident. I think to your point, Councilor Kennedy, we got to keep the pressure on the federal delegation because there are real liaisons into Washington. But I didn't know if, Commissioner, you wanted to speak to any of those issues, because I know your department's been right on top of it as well.
Yeah, no, Governor, I think what you stated was accurate, but all homes do have access to emergency services. I was on the phone last night with Director Buxton, and he's working today. So I think they're doing everything they can to get all the paper, to get it gathered. They're working with the communities, and I think we're doing everything we can to keep this, I would say, as streamlined as possible.
Governor, I was going to wait until the Department of Safety came up to address this issue, but since we're talking about it now, I've certainly heard from my communities that were hit very hard with the flooding, and some of them, particularly Acworth, have expended funds from the 2021 floods. They really have no capacity to borrow more money at this point, and still haven't received some of their FEMA funding. I do want to give a shout out to Rob Buxton, Director Buxton, for the work that he's been doing to expedite the 2021 payments for both Alstead and Acworth and other communities, and that he's really taking a very proactive approach about getting these damage assessments done and in so that the 2023 FEMA payments can come more quickly. I understand that you've made a determination not to declare a state of emergency, which means that the loan funds, interest-free loans from the state, are not currently available to our communities. And I guess if we're waiting for the presidential declaration, then my question is, are we ready at that point, as soon as we get the declaration, to start issuing these loans? Because that process has never been used before. This is a new process, and I don't want to get there, have the declaration in hand, and still be dragged down in waiting for a process to be developed. I want to make sure that we can get those funds out right away and get some asphalt on the ground before the asphalt plants close.
So if you're looking for an answer for that, I can't give you that, but what I will do is look back. If there is a declaration, the question is, are we ready to immediately start handing out those loans? So I don't want to speak to that.
So what I would ask is, let's make sure that Rob or the team is in direct contact with every potential, not just who asked, but proactively reach out to every potential town who may be looking to activate those low zero interest loans through the state. Right? And just to be clear, the federal declaration, you're right, FEMA is always very slow on their money. We're not waiting for that, but their declaration will activate the state loan program. So let's make sure that we're proactively reaching out, and so everyone understands the application process. To your point, Counselor, I think has the paperwork and can answer, kind of proactively answer their questions. So as soon as it is done, hopefully in the next few weeks, they can go, hopefully with very little roadblocks in their way.
Yes, sir, we'll get on that immediately.
And I have to be honest, I don't have the piece of legislation that I signed in front of me. Is the loan program administered through, it's not through you, is it through DRA? Is it through, I'm not sure who it's through. Do you know who it's? Is there a commissioner in the audience that's in charge of the loan program?
It says the state treasurer.
It's the treasurer, right? Okay.
Ms. Mezzatelli.
Yeah, so why don't we just have Rob coordinate, because he has the connection with all the cities and towns.
We have the people working on this immediately.
But make sure she's involved in the conversation, or someone from the treasurer's office. I didn't know it was DRA or treasurer.
So once it's declared, let's see if we can anticipate who's going to want to go.
Exactly.
Can I just add to Governor that I appreciate that we're having this conversation, because if you think that we don't quite understand this process, because it's a new law, and the Attorney General, is what I understand, is trying to figure out how this thing's going to be mapped out. And it is kind of a new piece of legislation, and this might be a first. Let's try to execute it, but find out the communities, like the Governor suggested, that would be eligible and might want to use it. Therefore, if we ever have an exercise a year or two from now, we know what we're doing.
When I leave here today, Assistant Commissioner LaVoy and I will go directly back to HSCM. We'll meet with Rob today, and we'll get on this.
And if I may, the initial step is the application, which is on the HSCM website now. It's on the HSCM resource page. But for additional questions and whatnot, I just want to be proactive to make sure they understand that the first step application is there. If they have any other questions of what would qualify, to be able to just reach out to you or even Monica, the state treasurer.
I would just say, again, Governor, that I know you've made a decision that there's not a state of emergency for many of our communities. Ackworth, in particular, with the majority of its roads washed out, it's an emergency to them and to those communities. So I would urge you to take another look at that, and particularly if this money is not going to be freed up in time for them to get asphalt down on the roads before the winter.
Thank you.
Can you look at the graffiti too?
We've got the graffiti.
Not as quick as he does.
Okay, further discussion for DOT? Further discussion for DOT? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of items 13 through 20, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those items are approved. I'll now ask the council to, or I should ask for a motion from the council to remove item 31A from the table.
Move. Second.
All in favor of removing item 31A from the table, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are, that item is removed. Can I get a motion to adopt agenda item 31A?
Move.
For discussion, please. Second. Motion and a second. Discussion on 31A? Yeah, Councilor Wheeler?
Yes, Governor. We've taken a hard look at this lease item here to lease backhoes for the Department of Transportation since the last meeting. And I think that we have found that if we outright purchase the backhoes instead that we currently are leasing, that it makes more financial sense. We can save some money, and that we should vote no on this lease. And then we're giving the department the signal to move forward with purchasing the backhoes that we are currently leasing.
Further discussion? Councilor Gattis?
Saving a little money is an understatement. We go from $10 million to $5 million. And that would do an awful lot of graffiti removal.
The item for the lease was $7.3, $7.4 million.
Plus the extras.
Plus the extras, yep.
So we were
And that's
close to
over 5
10.
years, so we'd have to find funds to do the purchase now, but the overall life-saving cost is correct. We provided the analysis to everybody. It is a substantial saving.
I think if you went to fiscal and they saw the savings,
yes,
probably wouldn't have a problem.
Right.
I guess you're going to find out. We have a backhoe versus state order. Further discussion on this before we take up a vote? Councilor Kennedy?
So just so I have it clear in my head, so there's a sentiment I sense from the council that the vote is down, and that we're going to purchase the John Deeres. How long will it take to go back and do the paperwork, and does that have to come back to council for approval?
There will be elements of it that will have to come back to council. So if you vote this down and give us the direction to pursue purchasing the existing ones that we are currently leasing that are coming to the end of their lease, we'd have to go to fiscal to seek the funding to do the purchase. We'd have to enter into a sole source agreement with the current lease provider. That would come to council. And I need to clarify, but I also think there will be a council item to give us permission to expand the fleet by adding those leased backhoes and loaders to our fleet inventory. They would need plates, and we would need the authority to expand the fleet by that number as well. So there will be a couple of council items. We've been doing the work. I don't know if fiscal meets again until probably the fall, so it will probably be a couple of months before those subsequent items come forward.
So we'll still be able to use the John Deeres up until that point?
Yes.
Yeah.
The leased ones actually go to the end of '24. Yeah.
Okay, so we have plenty of time.
Start delivery, right.
And then hopefully if we get to them quick enough and set up an agreement, we might be able to lower the price. Possibly?
The price that we got was asking them was a quote for what it would take currently. So that's a current price that we
Because if we're waiting a couple of months, I don't want to see the price go up.
Yeah, no, I don't think it
We
will.
want to lock in now.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion on item 31A? Okay. All in favor of item 31A, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All-
I'm sorry.
I tricked you. All opposed?
No.
Opposed? No. With that, item 31A is voted down. Okay. And that's good. Thank you. So moving on from DOT, I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 21 from the Deferred Compensation Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 21 is approved. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 22, 23, and 23A from the Community Development Finance Authority?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Stevens?
Good morning. My name is Molly Kaler. I'm the Director of Housing and Community Development in CDFA. I'm here on behalf of Executive Director Katie Eastwood Market this morning.
Good morning. Agenda item 23. This is $500,000 for Epping Meadows. And within this budget, we have funds from Invest New Hampshire via the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority in the amount of $786,000 specific to Epping Meadows. Yet those funds were reallocated and approved at the June 28, 2023 meeting. So those funds have been reassigned. At the meeting, we approved 2 transfers of large sums of funds from Invest New Hampshire through New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority in the amount of $3.2 million, represented by Ebbing Meadows and the residents at Chestnut, and these were transferred to Wallace Farms in McIntosh. So, just want to bring that to your attention that they're not being applied this time.
Great, thank you for making note of that. We will go back to this project and confirm that there are backup funding sources in place to be able to move the project forward.
Thank you.
Further discussion for CDFA? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of items 22, 23, and 23A can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No on 23 and 23A, please.
Thank you. Hearing no other opposition, those items are approved. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 24 through 27 from the Department of Revenue Administration?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion for DRA? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The tax collector is off the hook.
How's revenue?
I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 28 from New Hampshire Employment Security.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? George is off the hook. Item 28 is approved. Can I get a motion to adopt agenda items 29 through 35 from the Department of Energy? Although I will note that item 34 is not used.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions for Department of Energy? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No on 31.
Hearing the no on 31, all the items are approved. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda item 36 from the Office of the Consumer Advocate?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 36 is approved. Could I have a motion to adopt agenda item 37 from the Fish and Game Department?
Move.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes.
Councilor Wheeler. I think the director's here.
Director, could you just give me an update on the gravel removal from the Milford, town of Milford's gravel bank? Whether that's a go yet?
For the record, Scott Mason, Executive Director, on Fish and Game. We are still waiting to hear back from the town of Milford. We have been contacting them every 2 weeks and still haven't heard back from them.
Thank you, Director.
Any other questions? Item 37. Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 37 is approved. Could I have a motion to adopt agenda item 38 from our friends at the Department of Corrections? The motion, Councilor Wheeler. Thank you.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion for Commissioner Hanks? Councilor Warmington. Commissioner is here.
Good morning, Governor and council members. Helen Hayes, Commissioner of the Department of Corrections, Thorpe.
Good morning, Commissioner. Just wondering why this item 38 was sole source, and why was it not put out to bid?
Thank you, Councilor Warmington. This is an existing contract that doesn't expire for laboratory services until 2024. We're having to ask for an increase in price limitation because of the cost of labs, and we've also had to change some of our booking labs because of an increase in STIs that we're seeing, so we're trying to get ahead of that. But it's really, in the pure sense, not a sole source, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Commissioner. Item 30 is approved. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 39, 39A, and 39B from the Department of Business and Economic Affairs?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Counselor Stevens? We have someone from Powell. There he is. Hiding back. Morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner, and this is on the agenda. This has to do with Invest New Hampshire and recent modifications to the scope of work of one of our projects, which is a decrease in unit size from 56 units to 45 units with an increase in rent, which I could not find. But it came as a real surprise. We will see an amended contract, but again, no fault of yours, but to find out through a municipal zoning board meeting, it's really inappropriate that that happened. We need to hold our grant recipients accountable. This was a $3 million grant for much needed workforce housing. I get it that they're all struggling financially. This has to be resolved. And please advise if we're going to see another contract at the next meeting correcting this, and how are we going to handle this sort of modification moving forward?
So we are waiting a formal request from the developer for this change in their contract under the Invest NH program. So once we have that, I'll be able to speak a little bit more directly to what the implications would be, but from what I understand, the change keeps them within the requirements that we have under the Invest NH program for the percentage of affordable units that need to be in the project for them to be eligible. But we will review all of that once we get the formal request.
Great, no, I appreciate it. I mean, we're counting on those units. And then secondly, the challenges with electrical switchgear. And I just wanted to pass out an email from a builder. The challenges with procuring electrical switchgear, it's an impact to Invest New Hampshire and our state's housing shortage. Builders are waiting a year to 18 months for electrical switchgear from one of 4 major manufacturers of electrical switchgear. This is more promising than 2 vendors who simply cannot deliver or will not deliver components. There are allegations of price gouging, hoarding, and diverting. There's no transparency with the wait list. Builders are paying in full in advance, and there's a report of a builder paying a premium of 50% to get a product. And you'll see in this email, financial losses are staggering and potentially staggering for our builders. West Elm in Salem has 96 units ready to go. The builder is losing $150,000 a month. And Mr. Franks, who has 3 projects in the queue, he has the potential to lose $600,000 annually. And Sean Malone at the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority conducted a survey of 18 projects that are underway with New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority. Only 3 are okay with their schedule. 15 have serious delays yet can manage. Yet 7 will experience serious consequences as a result. As New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority said, switchgear seems to be taking about a year from when it's ordered, although this is highly unpredictable. And we have had experiences with incomplete deliveries and last-minute unexplained delays. Transformers are also problematic. The utility companies often will not deliver or even prioritize a project for transformer deliveries until its switchgear has been installed. So it's a vicious cycle, and it's impacting this brilliant program that we have in place, and it's impeding our delivery of workforce housing. And I reached out to Governor Sununu. Governor Sununu is prepared to reach out to one of the CEOs who's getting significant subsidies for electrical switchgears. The Department of Justice has been informed, and the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority is reaching out to the federal delegation.
So I just hope that there's some way of exerting pressure. And this is no fault of the BEA, but we just have to exert pressure on these manufacturers. They took their money and they're not delivering.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with everything you said there. That it's definitely delaying projects, both residential and commercial. Supply chain issues have become rather common in the area of development. This one seems particularly egregious, I guess, in some ways. But we're working with New Hampshire Housing, with the Department of Justice, the Governor's Office, to do what we can to help move these products along for our projects. They're all facing time deadlines as well.
Exactly. So with some of the fines that are pending, if they do not hit deadlines, say for LIHTC, finding relief, and Andrew Dorset is going to explore relief options with U.S. Treasury, correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Further discussion for BEA? Oh, Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you. On Agenda 39, which obviously is an important contract, consulting contract, apparently the highest bidder was Mission Broadband, and this is to develop a 5-year action plan to basically provide an understanding of the build-out of broadband infrastructure in New Hampshire. My understanding is that the University of New Hampshire was building out some map of broadband in the state of New Hampshire. So once building out, this contract, I guess, is looking at a kind of a 5-year broadband action plan. Are they going to be interfacing with the University of New Hampshire?
Yes, sir.
Is this $2 million approximately good value for what we're getting, considering that a lot of legwork might be already being done?
Yeah, they're similar but different efforts here. So the contract that we've got here, number 39, is related to a new program and a new pot of funding that we have been awarded by the federal government, by the NTIA. So that's approximately $197 million in addition to the $122 million that we were awarded under the Capital Projects Fund. That was under ARPA. So in order to access these funds under the $197 million number, we are required to submit a substantial amount of information around a 5-year development plan, plus action plans, both initial and final, before we can access those funds. So there's a requirement component to this. But as you point out, we do have contracts with UNH, and they're building out that UNH, or the broadband map right now. That will definitely inform absolutely the strategy for where we go with this next round of funding. So you'll remember we have the 2 contracts that you approved last year. Those are underway to get those 50,000 new addresses, unserved and underserved, stood up and getting high-speed internet. We are hoping to launch by the end of this month the BMGI program, which was the $25 million under capital project funds. Once those 2 are underway, that will hopefully get us, from a construction standpoint, butting up exactly up against this new pot of money, which will be defined by the consultant and the contract that we have in front of you today. So a big long circle there, but that's sort of how that works.
Right. I just want to congratulate you on 9 bidders. Could you share that?
Yes,
that magic with the other?
I appreciate that.
Having 9 bidders on a contract. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further discussion, Councilor Gatsby.
Another issue. Have you had an opportunity to talk to DOT about ARPA funds for their backloaders?
No, I have not.
Backhoes. They were supposed to
backhoes.
They were supposed to talk to you about getting some ARPA funds so that they didn't have to go through.
It's not a simple process either.
I'm sure it
But
isn't.
I would say, Councilor, as far as the state fiscal recovery funds that we use under GOFA, those have all been allocated at this point, as you know. So we don't have any additional funds available right at this moment. We'll see as we get to the next year and a half, as we get closer to that obligation deadline, what's available.
They need them sooner than that.
Yeah. Well, the good news is general funds came in over $30 million over plan last month. So we have general funds too.
Must be funds around.
There's money around. Fiscal can find their pot of money. Absolutely. Further discussion? Okay. All in favor of items 39, 39A, and 39B, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. I'm now going to ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 40 through 43A from the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilor Stevens?
Good morning, Sarah Stewart, Commissioner of the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources.
Good morning, Commissioner. I want to give a shout out to not only you, but the leadership at Hampton Beach. Our lifeguards have made 250 saves to date this summer, and an unusual incident on Sunday, plane went down, and the guards were the first ones on the scene to assist the pilot. And then you see video footage of our lifeguards hauling the plane out of the ocean. So, thank you. We'll be honoring them on the 23rd, but well done.
They're on top of it morning, noon, and night, and they're well trained. And thankfully, no one was injured in that airplane. We give a new meaning to is it a bird, is it a plane over at Hampton, and it turned out okay. But there's a lot of people there, and even though it was a rainy spring, our numbers are record high once again. So we have a lot of lifeguards who are very busy.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilor Kennedy?
Mr. Governor, I want to thank the Trails Bureau and their team for trying to get the trails back in order up in Pittsburgh. Still have a ways to go, but they're out there working it every day of the week to get those trails back and reconnected. My question is a little bit off topic, but you know that the big swath of land up there, the 146,000 acres, that's owned by, I guess, Blue Source Sustainable.
The Connecticut Lakes area. Yep.
And so there's some question about the agreement that you signed earlier, I think in June, about whether or not it's a working forest or whether they can pull back from, cutting timber and using it for carbon credits. I'm just wondering, are we going to meet with folks up there to kind of educate the public? Because it seems like it's going in 4 different directions on what the perception of what's going on up there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, I don't want to say rumors, that might not be the right word, but a lot of people are talking about this. We're trying to reach out directly to the company. So I know that Patrick Hackley, our state forester, has made outreach, and I don't have an update on you right now. People's vacations have crossed wires a little bit over the last 2 weeks, but we're looking for a direct conversation with the company.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because I believe the management group is Landbest, and they have a presence in West Stewartstown.
Yep.
But they haven't been as forthcoming on what's going on, so it's always good, Governor, to push out the information to the public to find out if they're going to forest, their forest land, or if they're going to hold back and use it for carbon credits. So it's important for the economy up there.
And why would the government be involved in this?
It's their private.
It's private land.
Their land.
Absolutely.
So I just want to be clear. If somebody wants, in the state of New Hampshire wants to do something, I don't know the situation, but I just don't want
We have
to do anything.
easements.
If you're doing things on your private land, that's your business. But
We have easements on it, and so we have a good working relationship. So we're just trying to reach out to them directly so that there aren't rumors about it.
Right.
So we do have easements.
Yes.
So we have some involvement.
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to be clear to the public.
Yes.
We're not just knocking on everyone's door asking what you're doing with your backyard.
Governor, I'm not suggesting that. 20 years ago, we bought the easements for development purposes, and I think Senator Judd Gregg and Senator Shaneen were involved at that point, and we have a trail system up through there. But the logging community, who have a relationship with them, want to know if they can continue to log or not. And yeah, they can do anything they want with that property to some extent. But it would be nice to know what they're doing with it, and we do have a relationship with them. So let's kind of get that out in the open.
Other discussion? Okay. All in favor of items 40 through 43A, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. I'll ask for motion to adopt agenda items 44 through 72A from the Department of Environmental Services.
Move.
Second?
Any discussion for DES? Councilor Stevens.
Good morning, Bob Scott with the Department of Environmental Services.
Good morning, Commissioner. Thank you for speaking with me yesterday regarding malware threats and our cybersecurity funding and grant program for water and wastewater treatment plants. We know that over the past 2 years, we've given 11 grant awards out there. It's not applicable to every municipality, but I think it's important that we push the program with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is doing gratis audits. Can you add to that?
Sure. So two things. So as you referenced, we're currently running a ARPA-funded cybersecurity program, grant program for water and wastewater systems. We're pretty much obligated all of that money. We had allocated $2 million to that. So that's a success story. And now we're looking at continuing the program using set-aside monies for the state revolving loan funds in the short term. What you're also referring to, obviously, is the DHS Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Our cybersecurity advisors doing a lot of work for us in our communities, doing free assessments. So again, we get a free assessment done, get a checklist of things that need to be done, come to us, and we'll give you up to $50,000 to help address that. As you're probably aware too, I'm also involved nationally with CISA. I'm on a federal advisory committee for them for this very reason, for my involvement with water and wastewater. So I am trying to get some, I would like to get some federal money to use New Hampshire as a not only what we're doing, but as a best management practice and a pilot, and kind of expand it in other ways.
And these funds, it's broad, beyond water and wastewater. There's 17 critical infrastructure categories that municipalities, private entities can reach out and get these cybersecurity audits done.
Yeah, so Dennis Goulet may be able to talk to this too, but there are some grant monies that have been awarded for state and local government. So this is for, the intent was for municipalities, and they do things like cyber in a box to get on .gov and that type of thing. So there's a lot of crossover. Interestingly enough, yesterday I met with CISA and some others on what's the next step for water systems, because they are relatively, it depends on the water system, but there's some that we give them, here's your recommendations, and they don't know. It's the same person that does the lawn is going, I don't know what to do with this type of thing. So we're also looking at maybe cyber in a box, so they have a place to go, they know what to do, and then get some services. So it's kind of the next step we're talking about.
Thank you.
Further discussion for DES? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I have a motion to adopt agenda items 73 through 75 from the New Hampshire Veterans Home?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Warren.
Always have a mic issue. Good morning. Kim McKay, Commandant, New Hampshire Veterans Home.
Still morning, good morning, Commandant. I see in item 75 that we are seeking to contract with some temporary staffing services. I'm just wondering if you can give us an update on your workforce vacancy rate and your waiting list, and how long the longest person is on the waiting list.
Sure. So we're about 38% overall vacancy rate for the whole facility, 47% for nursing. So that's about where we have been. We're not seeing a whole lot of change. However, I think those numbers might change a little bit because we had 3 resignations recently from our nursing staff. And they're tired, honestly. That's what they're saying, is they don't want to do mandatory overtime, and we're constantly doing that. We have to do that to meet the needs. So we are coming with this request for a temporary staffing contract to try to fix that. I don't intend to open up closed units. I just intend to fill the units that we already have staff on and try to give them a little bit of relief. It's been 3 years plus that we do mandatory overtime. So every pay period, every 80 hours, they sign up for a 4-hour block of mandatory overtime. But then they're often approached at the end of their shift because we have call-outs or we don't have anybody there and we have to ask them to stay again. So it is a vicious cycle, and I'm hoping with this contract, we came in front of you about a year ago for a contract, and we obtained a company from California. We only went for one company, and they were able to produce nobody. And so that's why we're coming back to you. This time our approach was to model what other agencies are doing and choose 3 companies and split the monies throughout those 3, and that way we have more of a chance of getting some people in to help staff. Currently, we have 132 residents as of this morning. Our approved wait list, meaning our waiting for bed, is 21, and we have 39 other residents or potential residents in the application process. We get 2 to 3 new applications each week, and it's a long process. They have to be vetted through the VA system to ensure they're qualifying as a veteran, and so there are 39 people going through that process. The units that we have people on, we have right now, I'll give you an example, one of our neighborhoods, Tar South, has beds that are empty, even though we have them fully staffed because we don't have enough staff to take care of them. This traveling contract is my hope to fill the units we're already in fully so we can up those numbers. But for me to give you a hard number would depend on how many people we get from the contract, how many we recruit in, and who retires or who resigns. But the goal is to always get our numbers up.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, all in favor of items 73 through 75, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I have a motion to adopt agenda items 76 through 78A from the Department of Education?
Move. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions on these 12 items, Councilor Warmington?
Good afternoon. For the record, Frank Oakley, Commissioner of Education.
Commissioner, good afternoon. I am looking at 78A. This is the grant money for Seven Hills, $7 million. This was a accept and expend before the council 2 meetings ago. I am in favor of granting money to Seven Hills. So I'd like to just say that right off the bat, that I am in favor of this. However, it is essential that we actually make sure that the state is getting something in return for its $7 million. We talked about this at the initial accept and expend. So we had a meeting at the last meeting, and now we have a contract before us. And just in a brief review, I know a whole host of issues. There is a mortgage to be executed in here. The mortgage document is not presented to us. The mortgage, as described on page 9 of this document, is subordinate to everything. It's subordinate to the current debt of the organization and any debt that they may take on in the future. So there's no assurance whatsoever that we will actually be able to recover anything should there be a problem or a default in this. There's no appraisal attached or required. We talked about that. The matching funds, they're supposed to be matching funds, but these are not matching funds in the typical sense that they would have to match dollar for dollar everything that we do. In fact, they don't have to even expend funds for 5 years. If they do, it's not even clear what our remedy would be. One of the things that's particularly bothersome about the contract to me is that there's no survival clause in here to say what terms survive the expiration. It says in here that only by the express terms. Would it continue? And it's not, there's very few places where there are express terms. So it's not even clear that most of their obligations continue after the first 2 years. This is in general, with respect to site visits, it indicates we can have one site visit, we can have as many as we want of reviews of records, but only one site visit is indicated in here. This just looks like a contract that, to me, was it reviewed by the Attorney General's office? Because this is just really not putting in the kind of protections that we talked about needing. And again, in favor of the project, but this contract just doesn't get us there, in my mind.
So I'm happy to address all of those concerns that you've raised, because those are all issues that we've discussed and we've thought about in the development of this particular contract. And it was worked on by the attorneys at the Department of Education as well as the Attorney General's office. So relative to the mortgage, the way that this project is financed right now and the institution Seven Hills is moving forward is they are using a line of credit that they have available to them to begin the work. So we don't know what their ultimate financing will be. They're trying to get this facility opened. As you know, they have license for 105 students. They're only able to serve 26 students right now. So they have taken, again, the risk upon themselves to advance this work through a line of credit. They intend to convert that to permanent financing at a certain point in time. We don't know what that looks like, so it's very difficult to not subordinate our mortgage to that ultimate mortgage because they would not be able to get permanent funding for that at that time. And so recognizing that, we wanted to protect the interests of the state. And I think it's important to understand that Seven Hills is a larger organization. Their most recent 990 filing, financial filing indicates that they have net assets of over $100 million. So a significant entity. This is a $7 million project, so it's small. So what we did is we added to this agreement a guarantee of the parent company in the event of default. So we continue to have our subordinated mortgage. We don't know exactly what that will look like. We can't wait until, this project can't wait in terms of serving the students until they get to that permanent financing stage. So we both have the mortgage and we have the guarantee of the parent company, which I think is substantive for the state. Relative to the match, in fact, the way that the matching language is structured is that they have to put in at least as much money as we put in, and whatever they don't put in, they are not eligible. We would be able to claw back the funds that they did not match. So if they've not put in construction funds, not operating funds, but construction funds equal to the construction funds that we're putting in, then we would be able to claw back or not advance those funds to them. So I think that we've done that. Relative to survival, I can't quote you the paragraph, but I do know that there is a provision in here that basically does indicate that the contract provisions survive through the completion of the project, I believe is a specific language in the agreement. So we have tried to ensure ourselves that that survival goes beyond just the initial funding, but through the full 10-year period. There is a provision in this agreement that allows the surviving provisions to stay active and live through that full period. And then in terms of site visits, I believe the provisions in this contract enable us on request to have as many site visits as we want, not less than the one. So
I think, I'm not going to get into a big legal dispute, but I don't think that the survival clause accomplishes what you say that it accomplishes, and I am concerned that the obligations, a lot of these obligations are ending in 2 years. There is no provision in the mortgage. The only provision in the mortgage is not in the event of a default. It is in the event that there's only one provision in here for the mortgage to kick in, and it doesn't include things like if they didn't give preference to New Hampshire kids, or if they didn't continue. It's only if they didn't continue to serve as an approved program. There's no minimum whatsoever. They could be an approved program for one student, and they would still, that mortgage default wouldn't kick in. So again, I would say I would like more time with this. I would like this to go back. I'd like to have an opportunity to speak with your attorney, to go through these provisions and make sure that we end up with a contract that accomplishes all the things that you're talking about. I just don't think you have it.
Well, so let me just respond to one of the comments that you just made relative to, you're assuming that if there's some type of, you indicated that you're looking in the mortgage lien, a default provision on the mortgage in the event that they don't give preference to New Hampshire students. So what we do have is a paragraph in here that requires preference to New Hampshire students, but rather than interrupting the business flow, what we say is if they don't provide preference to the New Hampshire students, then we require them to pay the cost of the placement of that student in an alternative setting. So there is a financial penalty for doing that, but by approaching it that way, what we do is we preserve the ongoing ability to service the students. What we have to keep in mind is this is not a typical commercial transaction. The government is getting involved in terms of trying to advance this because I assume that there's a belief that there's a benefit to the citizens of New Hampshire to make sure that these services for disabled students in the state are able to be met.
Yeah, I think that if they didn't pay, as you just described, there's no provision in here then to recover those funds.
If they don't pay, it would be an event of default.
The event of default isn't covered under the mortgage. The only event that's covered under...
Correct, so then it's an event of default, and I would go after the guarantee against the large parent company who is in the business of trying to support and provide support to these students.
And the guarantee is not provided here, nor is the mortgage. When we see loans from BFA, we see loans from the CBFA, we get a packet full of documents. BFA provides us with the whole packet, the mortgages, the guarantees. They're supposed to execute that mortgage within 10 days. Why don't we have it?
Because we're in the midst of putting this deal together to get it to you to continue the construction on this work.
It's supposed to be executed within 10 days. I'm assuming we have a draft of a mortgage at this point, or a guarantee. I'd like to see this guarantee to see that it actually provides what we're talking about.
Okay.
So I would move to table this just because I think it needs more work.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please, Councilor Kent.
So I'm going to steal a Councilor Warmington line. If we were to delay this contract, what would be the repercussions?
So we are holding up the ability of the service provider to support students. I mean, I had a conversation with the president this morning. They are at 26 students. Their limitation is trying to get these facilities into a position to be able to support students in New Hampshire.
And so is it not true that this is the most complicated, vulnerable population, or one of the most in the state of New Hampshire?
That's correct.
And to steal a line from someone from the fiscal committee, it's a population that nobody wants to really take care of?
Well, it's a difficult population to support, but we are trying to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate your effort.
Councilor Stephen?
Thank you very much. One thing that I was hoping to see as we saw the solution held was the requirement of a staffing plan. When Project Mountain shuttered and they were seeking use of their restricted endowment funds, staffing was the financial challenge, the shortage. This is an intensive level of care. It's one-on-one. I was able to find out that the assessed value in the town is $6.9 million. They paid $6 million. I had to find that on my own. My question is, again, their endowment is significant, $52 million unrestricted. So often nonprofits will go to capital campaigns. I support this. We need to take care of our most vulnerable residents, but I just want to see guardrails. The 10-year requirement, it's not contingent on enrollment numbers, and that enrollment preference for New Hampshire residents will only be required for the initial 10 years. It's not permanent. Looking out for our most vulnerable residents and our taxpayer dollars, but I support, but I want enhanced guardrails.
So just with respect to that, there is a staffing plan in the sense that these are licensed facilities. And in our rules, whether those are rules relative to the education programming or rules relative to the health and human services programming, we specify staffing ratios, right? So that is their staffing plan. What we don't want to do is involve ourselves in the business of telling them how to run their business. Bear in mind that this particular facility will hold at its maximum, if it gets to its full operating capacity, between 200 and 250 employees in a rural community, which I think is great for that community. Seven Hills has around 5,000 employees. They have the ability to, move those employees around. What I would say is that they are probably far better capable of managing their business than we are, and that what we really need is to make sure we set up a deal, which is what we've done here, that provides the right incentives for them to be able to and want to staff at maximum capacity, right? So they are losing money as they sit here at 26 students, and they want to get to their full capacity. They're waiting for us to enable that to move forward at this point in time.
I would just love an assurance that this is going to be a priority when it comes to staffing.
I'm not sure what you mean by assurance. In other words, so they're losing money without the staffing, so I assume that it's a priority for them to staff fully.
But as a follow-up, that they can meet the demands of staffing this appropriately.
I mean, quite frankly, I don't think that we can ask a business to make an insurance like that. At 1.8% unemployment, they're going to do all they can because that's the business that they're in. But we can't ask them to commit to us to say, we will come up with people that may or may not exist. They have all the right incentives to operate this efficiently, to operate it profitably for themselves so that they can make their payroll. But for us to require you must have so many staff in place. I mean, imagine that we don't have a vulnerable population and they don't fill it up, right? They're not going to sign a staffing plan that they don't need to support it. But we do have regulations in place that require them to have the appropriate levels of staffing to support the needs of the community that they're going to be serving.
Okay, further discussion on any of these items? Sorry. Kathy, I will come back. Councilor Katz.
Thank you, Governor. $100 million is not a lot of money if everybody's looking to claw back at it if they don't survive. And if somebody doesn't have an idea of what we're going to subordinate to, we could subordinate to an amount that's way overextended. That doesn't make sense to me.
So the $100 million is net of any existing debt and obligations that they have. In other words, so they've got assets, many of which are involved in liquid assets, as well as real estate, and then you take away the obligations. Their gross balance sheet is up in the $300 million range. It's net assets of $100 million.
But we have no idea of what we're subordinating
to. So we do know the debt that's on the books today.
We don't know what this project, we could be subordinating to $50 million on this project.
It's quite possible. I don't imagine that they're going to invest $50 million in this project, but either way, if they do $50 million, we still have $7 million in this project. We have a claim against the net assets of this entity, the parent company.
I would like to see that guaranteed before I approve.
I mean, not only the guarantee, but the mortgage is not only subordinate to any and all mortgages, deeds of trust, liens, and other instruments of the facility, but it's also those now in existence or any time hereafter. So they could enter into any kind of agreement where they are giving a security interest to somebody that will take priority over ours at any time into the future. And I guess I agree. I'd like to see the instruments, the documents.
Okay, there's a motion to table this item, item 78A. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. So you have a motion and a second. All in favor of tabling item 78A, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
So with that, the item is not tabled. Okay, any additional discussion on item 78A? Or any of the items?
Again, I just want to say I am for this grant. I think that you have not protected the state of New Hampshire here, or at least not demonstrated that. What we need to do is make sure that we are actually putting protections in place so that these services will be available to our most vulnerable populations going forward.
So you're for the grant? So you're going to vote for the grant?
I'm not voting for
Oh.
this.
So you're for the grant, but you're not voting for the
I'm
grant?
for
Okay.
it, put the right
It's either you're for it or you're not. There's no, either you're going to approve the money to expand services for the development disabled students in the state, or you're not going to vote.
No, that is not true, Governor.
Well,
We
you can be
say-
for or against
Yeah,
it,
you
against
can,
it.
you can. You can be for supporting the most vulnerable population in our community. You can be for a $7 million grant and still be against an irresponsible distribution of those funds with no adequate protections in place to make sure we're actually going to get anything in return for our $7 million.
Well, I think the Commissioner did a very good job explaining the securities there. So, all in favor of items 76 through 78A, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, specifically 78A.
Opposed.
Opposed.
With that, thank goodness, the grant passes. All right, they all pass. I'm going to continue by asking for a motion to adopt agenda items 79 through 81A from the Department of Safety.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Wheeler.
Good afternoon, Councilors, Governor. For the record, Bob Quinn from the Department of Safety.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just on item 81A, the police cars, are we changing the color of state trooper cars? I see a few on the road that appear to be more black than our traditional green, and our emblems seem to be muted. Is that what we're doing with these cars?
Is that my car?
Land and cover car.
No, sir, we're not changing the color, and actually, we have a registered color for the ones that are marked. We have the unmarked, the black ones, which are used for like special enforcement, so you'll see more of those, but the traditional color, no. When we go to contract, whether we contract with X or Y, we tell them what we want.
So you're saying that we haven't changed the color on the cars with the emblems?
I'm saying that I've gone out in the parking lot and asked the woman who's in charge of this, have we changed the colors?
Yeah.
Because I get that from people other than you. And in the past, years ago, there might have been a batch that came through slightly a little lighter, but no, they are staying with the traditional
No, these
colors.
emblems are distinctly muted into the
Oh, yeah,
background of the car.
No, yeah, you're correct. Those are called ghost vehicles, so we're using those, the unmarked cars on speed enforcement. But we have two different vehicles. We have the marked, the fully marked,
Okay.
which are the green and tan, and then we have the unmarked.